Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's live. I am so excited to be doing another DevOps project with all of you. And today we are going to be talking about Code Pipeline. I am super, super excited. It's so cool to see that we already have 15 people doing this project together. Please comment in the chat your name, where you're based, whether you've already done a DevOps project before or whether you're starting fresh. This is all super exciting to me, and I can't wait to get started. So I'm going to share my screen as usual, and let us dive straight into it. Alrighty, so as always, on the left-hand side of my screen, you are seeing my AWS Management Console. I've already logged in, so if you haven't logged in already, let's log in right now. On the right-hand side of my screen, here is the Nextwork community. So if you are not part of the Nextwork community yet, come join us. The link is in the description. If you already are part of the Nextwork community, welcome. It is very good to have you. And how you can find access to this project is by clicking on all AWS projects, on the left-hand side, on the left-hand bar. And you can find the project by scrolling down just a little bit more. And you can find Cloud DevOps CI/CD with Code Pipeline posted 1 minute ago. So this is straight hot off the press, this project today, isn't it? Let's start this project by clicking right over here, start your project here. And you will see a beautiful project app ready for you. Now, this project, CI/CD with Code Pipeline, is part 7 of our DevOps series of projects. And it is planned to be the very final piece of the CI/CD pipeline puzzle. But we'll see if in the future we get to add a few more features into the series. For now, know that if you've made it to this project, Code Pipeline, you are pretty much at like the grand finale of this project. So I can't wait to be doing this with you. If you've already done the first 6 projects and you made it here today, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. If you're like somewhere in between in this series and you're wanting to just check out this project before you get started, that's a smart idea too. So in this 7 project series so far, we have been really working so hard on creating something called a CI/CD pipeline to build and deploy a simple web app. So this is the final one. You're going to learn how to use AWS Code Pipeline. And as a quick recap, so far in this series, you have used Code Commit and Code Artifact to save copies of your web app's code and its dependencies in some very secure repositories in the cloud. You've used Code Build to compile and package your app's source code into a handy WAR file. You've also used Code Deploy to deploy that WAR file on servers so that users can see your web app, everyone around the world. That's pretty cool. Now, AWS Code Pipeline is here to automate the integrations between Code Commit, Code Build, Code Deploy. So do you see how Code Pipeline, although it might not be adding something huge to that entire deployment process, because really, once you've reached Code Deploy, users can see your web app. It's kind of reached the final point of that journey. So what is Code Pipeline here to do? It's here to automate the integrations. And that's why it's here to automate the integrations between these 3 services. And it's why in this architecture diagram, where you will see, every single service that we've used so far in this CI/CD pipeline, you'll see that Code Pipeline, where we're at for this project, is over here. It doesn't have its own kind of space in this huge process that we've been going on from you to Cloud9, creating your source code, to Code Commit, Code Build, Code Deploy. It's in the web server now, once it reaches your EC2 web app. So Code Pipeline actually sits in the middle here. It's here to integrate all these 3. And I think now is a good time to just have a quick recap, have a quick chat about what is the CI/CD pipeline one more time. Because we first talked about it back in project 1 of this series, but I appreciate that it's been a bit of time since project 1 of that series. So now's a good time to just remind ourselves, what does the CI/CD pipeline even mean? Supriya Chatterjee in the chat says, thanks for all the awesome AWS tutorials. Wish to see more videos in future on AWS, Terraform, and Git. Very, very cool ideas. Yeah, Terraform is very high in demand, I have to say. And thank you so much for the suggestion. Now, in terms of what is CI/CD pipeline, CI/CD, first, what does CI mean? What does CD mean? So CI/CD means continuous integration, continuous deployment. Notice how continuous is like that repeated word here. And that is, I think, honestly, that beauty of the CI/CD pipeline, because continuous just means it is always happening, always happening, always happening. And you want your code to always be integrating, always be deploying when you're working as a big team, when you're constantly pushing out changes to your users, when you are managing a lot of applications at the same time, and just the act of integrating your code and deploying your code takes a long time. So you want it to be happening all the time so it doesn't like clog up your processes too much. Bishop in the chat says, will it cost us working on this project? No, this project is free. Happy Farms Nigeria, what a cute name, says hello. I'm saying hello back. So while we're talking about continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous integration is basically what we were doing when we use code commit. Continuous deployment is basically what we were doing across code build and code deploy. Now, continuous integration basically means when you're working as a team, because in the real world, you are absolutely working with other engineers on the same application, on the same code base, you want to make sure that the changes someone makes doesn't conflict with the changes that you're making. What this looks like is, imagine you're writing a story with a friend, and for some reason, both of you are working on the same paragraph at the same time, and both of you make the same changes to the same sentence. Like, I'm writing once upon a time, someone said, and then all of a sudden, as I'm changing once upon a time to once upon a tomorrow, someone changes another word in that sentence, and they say like, oh, it should be once upon a yesterday. Okay, this is such a random example, but let's just say two people make the same changes to the same sentence, and they don't realize that they're making the same mistake, like making these changes on the same sentence across like a huge piece of code, and no one knows until one day they decide to like merge their changes and the code conflicts, something breaks, maybe it creates like a lot of errors with flow-on effects to other parts of the code base or other parts of their systems. So when that happens, it's like, oh, like we should have really noticed far in advance that we were actually working on the same lines, that the lines that I'm working on could conflict with the lines that you're working on, that what we're doing really interacts with each other. And the way to really make sure you're communicating and those changes are constantly being updated for each other, continuous integration exists. So it's kind of like how when you're working on a shared document with someone on Google Docs, when someone types those changes, you will see their changes on your document like live in real time. Code doesn't really happen like that at the moment. At the end of the day, code, when you make your changes, my friend that's seeing the same document won't see those changes until I commit my code. That's why it's so important for continuous integration to be happening, for me to constantly be committing my code and integrating my changes to what my friend is going to see. And same for my friend. I want to make sure that whatever changes my friend makes to the code, I am constantly seeing, so that if I ever make any other changes, I know that what I'm doing doesn't conflict with what they're writing as well, that we're not creating like some huge errors in the code base. And that's why continuous integration exists. And that's why code commit is so great. Like having a Git repository, having that Google Drive folder in the cloud, that is pretty much our single source of truth, like that one piece of code that everyone will know, like, oh yeah, that is the latest version of the code, one single latest version of our code. Like that is so important for people to always be pushing their changes to that Google Drive folder, so that anyone else that's also working on a local piece of their code will always be pulling those changes into their local workspace, so that we're always integrating our changes with each other. And then continuous deployment is basically that practice of making sure that whenever you're making some great changes, the users get to benefit from those changes as soon as possible. Continuous deployment. Continue to always deploy and make your changes available to the world, to the users, so they never have to wait too long until they get to until they get to basically reap the benefits of all of the hard work that you've been putting to your code, into your work, into your applications. And that is the reason why something like CodePipeline exists, because we want to make sure that people are always integrating their code and they're always deploying their code. We have code commit to help us with committing our code, but how do we make sure that it's continuous? How do we make sure it's continuous? We have code build and code deploy to help us with deploying our code, but how do we make sure it's continuous? I always think about CodePipeline as kind of like the answer to the continuous part of the CI/CD pipeline, to really make sure that all those integrations are happening and things are happening automatically, so that manual intervention is never the reason why something gets delayed, because a lot of these processes are now being automated. And CodePipeline is going to help us realize that. Okay, so that was a very, very long intro, but I hope that gives you a bit more context into why are we even caring about the CI/CD pipeline and how does CodePipeline contribute to that? Yeah, alrighty. So in today's project, let's get ready to learn how to create a pipeline with our service today. It's called AWS CodePipeline. And then we're going to execute the pipeline, which means we're going to see that automated flow between code commit, code build, and code deploy. And once we see that automated flow, we're going to learn a concept called a rollback, and we're going to trigger a rollback as well. I'm so excited to be doing this with you. I had so many like mind-blown moments when I was doing this project. So I hope you get that too. I really do. It's a lot of fun. In the meantime, you have Ayub says, hello from Morocco. Ah, that's so cool. Hello, you. Abhishek says, hello, Natasha. I'm saying hi back, Abhishek. Abhishek, I have been a massive fan of your work in the community, so thank you so much for being here. Akinola is here as well. Akinola Makinde says, hi, everyone. Hi, Akinola. I know that you are a little bit new to the community as well. You've joined recently, so to see that you're in this live now means a lot. So welcome, Akinola. Okay, so there are always two modes for you to do this project. There's low touch and there's high touch. High touch gives you the step-by-step instructions, where to click, what to type in. Low touch just tells you, here's the vague idea on what to do. Have fun discovering the AWS console. Have fun trying to solve these problems. We're going to always go with the high touch version so that we can do some step-by-step guidance together. And as you might know, if you've been doing these projects before, you're always going to be reminded to delete all your resources. Kind of like what the question that we had earlier, is this project going to be free? And I think that is such an important question to resolve right away. Yes, this project is free. We have tested it with free accounts to make sure that it is free, but you just need to make sure that you delete all your resources. Okay, even if you don't finish the entire project, even if you say, I'm going to continue it tomorrow, next week, next month, delete those resources by the time you close your laptop. And if you're ever stuck, ask the Nextweek community. Students like you are already asking questions about this project, so it is the best place to ask if you ever get stuck. Erwin in the chat says, make sure you look for free tier eligible. Erwin is a G. That is completely it. Make sure you look for free tier eligible resources if you're ever wanting to do your own projects with AWS, because that page, free tier eligible resources, is going to tell you whether or not a service is free or not to use. Cool. So I have clicked open this link that will take you to a documentation template. So once you click on this automatically opens up, and you, my friend, can now write some documentation for your project. So you're going to find out that you can't edit this copy. You're going to need to make a copy of of this template file. So you're going to have to click on File in the top right, and you're going to have to find that button that says Make a Copy, and that's what we're going to be doing. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure I clean this tab off of my browser so I don't accidentally use it. And there we go. I have made a copy, and this copy is something that I can use. So to make this ours, let's first in File, change that copy of, because we don't really need that, and add your name to it. So I'm going to call this Nets Project Documentation. And you can absolutely add your own name to the Your Name piece here. Double click here and type in your name. Voila, this is now yours. No one else can stake their claim on it now. Your name is literally on it. Rohit says, hi, everyone. I'm saying hi back, Rohit. So cool to have you here. Now we are ready to document. Our documentation template is ready. It's sitting there. It's warm. But in the meantime, we're going to be setting up our web app. And this is where we are going to be recapping basically projects 1 to 6 of this series to set up our web app, from scratch. Iman says, hi, Natasha. It's me, Iman. Hello. Suman says hello. Gerald's message is retracted now, but I hope you were saying hello. If so, hi, Gerald. Henry says, hi, Natasha. I'm already loving your intro. Can't wait to complete this project. Thank you so much. I can't wait to complete this project with you too. Yeah, Rohit says, hi, everyone. Irvin says, make sure you look for free tier eligible. Absolutely, guys. If you don't have an IAM user set up, I will absolutely recommend that you check out project 1 of this series to learn how to set up an IAM user and how to log into it. In the meantime, you'll see that I've already logged into my IAM user, and that's so that we can really get to the juicy parts of this project ASAP. Because next, after this, we're going to deploy a CloudFormation template. What? I know if you have been doing projects like 1 to 6 of this series, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, we didn't have to deploy a CloudFormation template for the first few parts. Now we're deploying one in the setup stage for the project. Yes, we are. So the last project in the series about CloudFormation is when you had to create your own template. You had to create your own template for this project. And that template included a lot of great resources to save you time on setting up the project. So that template would have included things like a code commit repository, a code build project, a code artifact domain, a lot of IAM policies and roles. And we're going to deploy that exact template that you set up in that previous project so that you're going to save yourself a lot of time with the setup stuff for this project. So you can pat yourself on the back if you created that CloudFormation template in the previous project, because you're saving yourself a lot of time in this one, for sure. Yeah, it's really also really fun to put into use something that you've created in the last project, I feel, so that, even after you've deleted a lot of the resources from the previous project, that one file that you saved, that CloudFormation template, you're still going to get to use. And yeah, really reap the benefits of as well. Now, if you still haven't done the CloudFormation project and you're like, oh no, doesn't mean I can't do this one, that's not the case. You can still do this project start to finish without the CloudFormation template from the previous project. It's just that the template helps you with skipping a few steps, saves you a lot of time, and that's why we're going to be using it in this demo today. And it's especially important because there are a few steps with using a CloudFormation template that I would love to be able to demo for everyone. But if you don't have a CloudFormation template and you're going to be using the steps and you're going to be doing all of these steps start to finish, you can absolutely refer to the videos for parts 1 to 6 of this project. The links to them are all in the bio, all in the description for this video. And you can get the slower kind of walkthrough, for every single one of those steps that we might be skipping later on by visiting those videos. I hope that makes sense. And let us do our first thing in the console now. Whew. Let us visit CloudFormation in the console. I'm going to type in CloudFormation here. Let's click on it. Yeah, very nice. Mel Lewis says, hi, Natasha. Hi, Mel. Welcome. Amog in the chat says, hi. Hi back. All right. So look here. When we get to CloudFormation, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a stack. So we're going to click Create Stack, and then we're going to select With New Resources, Standard. Under the Specified Template panel, we're going to select Upload a Template File over here. And then we're going to select Choose File, and we're going to upload the template you created in the last project. So if I were to click Choose File here, I should be able to find the template that I created in my previous project. And if you don't know where to find your template, you can always type in .yaml on your screen in the search bar, and it will automatically pop up all of the YAML files, which are basically the file format for CloudFormation templates, to quickly find yours. So I know which one is the one that I'm looking for today. It is this one, that I'll be using. But you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Natasha, but I don't have a copy of my template from the last project anymore. Where do I find it? Where did it go? If that's you, that's okay. I am going to do the demo now on how you can find your CloudFormation template. If you've lost it, if you can't find it, totally okay. How you can do this is in a new tab. So keep this tab because we're going to come back to it. But in a new tab, you're going to right-click on Stacks so that you can open this in a new tab. And this is an interesting part. From the filters, you can see that I have a lot of different stacks going that have all just like rolled back. They're complete now. If you go into deleted, you will now see all of the stacks that I've deleted in the past. So these are stacks that have successfully run and I don't need anymore, so I've deleted them. And that is what we did at the end of our CloudFormation project last time. In the last time, we deleted our stack, at the end of the project. So that's why you can't find that stack anymore if you were to still stay inactive, that default filter. So make sure you switch that filter status to deleted over here. And you can probably now see the stack that you deleted at the end of the last project. It's going to be called Network DevOps Project 2. That was the name. So click on that. And what you're going to do is you're going to find that template tab. Okay, once you find that, you're going to find that the exact template that you used in the last project, voila, it is still alive and it is over here. So you can just copy this template code, and that is exactly the template that gave you the successful result from the previous project. How good is that, isn't it? How good is that? Mel Lewis in the chat says, I'm glad I finally made it to alive. Aminu says, sending that vibe back to you. Mel Lewis also asked, are you going to be adding more projects for us to do? Yes, we will be. We will absolutely be continuing on with a free AWS project every single week. All right. Do you have any topics that you want to see more of, by the way, for these projects? Add them to the chat so we can add them to our projects to-do list. Cool. Now that you have a template code from your previous project, how do we incorporate that into this project? How you do that is first, right-click on this link to download and open a blank YAML file. So again, remember a YAML is basically the file format for our CloudFormation template. Kind of like how PDF is like a file format, .yaml, YAML is its own file format. And we've created a blank one for you to use. So right-click on that and click Save Link As to download it. And you can just put that in your downloads folder. Okay. And when you're ready, open it. Okay. Open that empty file. And you're going to see that it is just a blank slate. It's completely blank. Okay. There's nothing in here. These two lines are comments, so they're not going to affect the actual execution or the functions of the code. So what that means is with that blank slate, you now have the perfect canvas for copying and pasting your template code from the last project. So once you've copied that in, ooh, it looks beautiful, doesn't it? It looks so good. You can save that file and use this exact file to upload into your next template. Into your next CloudFormation stack. So we're back now into this tab where I was trying to upload a template file for a new CloudFormation stack. And I'm going to click on Choose File now, finally. And you're going to see that the file that you just filled in with your copied code, it's going to show up as an option for the file that you can upload. So I'm going to pick that. I'm going to upload that. Now, don't forget, just make sure that once you've uploaded your code in here, you're pressing save in your file. I've once tried to upload a file that I didn't save. Trust me, it didn't look pretty. So make sure you're saving your files. Okay, very, very nice. Now I'm ready to specify my stack details. And I'm just going to give it a name, Network DevOps Project. Sounds really good to me. And, oh, it already exists. So shall I change that to Network DevOps Project 3? Maybe, I don't think 3 exists yet. So once you've given it a name, select Next. Okay, select next again. We're happy to just keep the default settings over here. And at the bottom of the panel, there's going to be a callout that says, hey, by the way, CloudFormation is going to create a few IAM resources. It's going to create a few roles as a part of your CloudFormation template that you're about to deploy. Are you okay with that? Because roles is a bit of a sensitive subject because it gives things permissions. And AWS treats security very, very seriously. So if it sees that as a part of your template, you're going to start giving different services permissions to things. It's going to be like, hold on a second, do you know what you're doing? Do you know that some services are now getting permission to do things? And by acknowledging it, we're like, yes, CloudFormation, I know. And we want to do that. So we're going to press submit. And there we go. Now our CloudFormation template is now being deployed, which means that the services defined in our CloudFormation template are now getting created simultaneously at the same time for us. Erwin in the chat says, VS Code, highly recommended all-round text editor. I agree as well. So what Erwin was mentioning is this text editor that I was using is a great one for editing code, managing code. It works really, really well. It's called Visual Studio Code. You can absolutely use that. If you don't want to download software for editing your code, of course, you can just use your local text editor instead, which is TextEdit if you're using a MacBook, Notepad if you're on a Windows. But let's check in on our CloudFormation stack because it ideally would have deployed a few resources now. Shall we take a look together? I'm so happy. Look at this. It says create complete, everyone. I feel like it's the good energy of everyone in the chat today that has carried us through into such a quick create complete. I swear it didn't used to be this fast. But it is super fast. The entire thing created literally in a few seconds. Okay, maybe 1 minute. Wait, let's actually have a look. How long did it take for all of these resources to get created? Okay, it was at 34 past 9 p.m. And now, what? Literally in the same minute from, okay, that was literally 5 milliseconds? It took to deploy everything? Oh, okay, no, it was a 1 full second. It went from 34 minutes past 9 p.m. and all the way until 35 minutes past 1 p.m. Okay, so it took 1 minute to deploy all of those resources just now. That's crazy fast, everyone. If you just look at those resources, it deployed 10 resources for me in 1 second. Hello? That's crazy. So what did it deploy? So this is the time where we can start recapping the resources that are in our CloudFormation template. So we included a code artifact domain. We included a code artifact repository. And there were two sorry. Did I say the wrong word? I said code artifact domain, code artifact repository. There were actually two of them because we had our local repository and we also had an upstream repository. We have a code build project in here, a code commit repository, and also a few IAM resources to make sure that all of those resources above have all of the necessary permissions they need to function properly. So, we have an IAM policy for code artifact, for code build again. There was an IAM role for code build, an S3 bucket as well, called next with build artifacts. And this S3 bucket is going to store that WAR file that our code build process creates. If you're feeling like that was a bit unfamiliar, that was a bit fast, please check out part 6 of this DevOps series to get an in-depth discussion on everything that goes on in this CloudFormation template. In the meantime, we're going to fly into the next step of our project because we're going to verify that the deployment was truly successful and everything was truly created by visiting the resources that were created. So I'm going to first visit the S3 bucket. There we go, the S3 build artifacts bucket that was deployed from our CloudFormation template. Great success. It looks really good. It has been created properly. Tick. It looks good. Next, shall we have a look at our IAM managed policy? We created a policy and we stored that in our CloudFormation template. Did it work correctly? Let's have a look. Did. Our policy worked beautifully. Look at that. We have a policy name here. Looks great. It also has 4 permission policies attached to it. That looks amazing. Everything is functioned as it should. So I am loving this. Erwin, Abdurrahman. Hi, Abdurrahman. Says, hi, Natasha. Good to be here again. I'm so happy that you're here too, Abdurrahman. Wow. Shout out to Abdurrahman. You're awesome. Erwin says, Oregon region must be less busy. Honestly, you must be right. The fact that it deployed it all in 1 second, that was freakishly cool. Mel Lewis says, thanks, Natasha, for all your help and encouragement. Well, Mel, thank you so much for all of your support as well and your encouragement. This is literally, this encouragement and this energy and this support, it's what keeps us going all the time for the entire team. Okay. Now, you might remember that our CloudFormation template, as helpful as it is for deploying all of those resources in literally a second for me, it doesn't deploy everything and it doesn't set up everything. So there is still going to be a bit of setup time that we're going to need to spend to get our web app up to speed for CodePipeline to use later on as well. So the first thing that our CloudFormation template does not include is a Cloud9 environment, and that's why we still need to set one up from scratch. I just find it so ironic that out of everything, a Cloud9 environment is the one thing that we really couldn't put into our template, because the Cloud9 environment is also the thing that we've been doing since project 1 of this series. Literally, it's like the OG part of this entire series. Until the end, we are still needing to do this one from scratch. So this is probably your 7th time creating a Cloud9 IDE, and I feel like by the end of this project, you're absolutely a Cloud9 IDE creator pro. So as you might remember, we're going to use a new EC2 instance to host our environment. And that new EC2 instance should be using t2.micro, which is the free tier eligible version. And the platform, though, instead of Amazon Linux 2, do you remember what it should be? I mean, instead of Amazon Linux 2023, it should be Amazon Linux 2. So once that's all set up, we can just leave everything else as the default and create our environment straight away. This is really fun. Oh, I love it. I love that it is already created for me. I just need to click create, open, and I just need to wait a few seconds for my Cloud9 environment to be ready. And this is where I do like a little dance every time, because I feel like it will keep you excited as you do this project. And it's always great to be moving a little bit as well. Bring some movement into the way that you do these projects. It's fun. You know, we even have on Cloud9 net, euphoric is what John says in the chat. Thank you so much, John. That's so sweet. And actually, while we're waiting for our Cloud9 IDE to be ready for us, let us have a peek at the next few steps that we're going to do. We're going to install Maven in Java. And as you might remember, Maven is our package manager, and Java is the programming language that we're using to write our web app from scratch. And that's why these are the 2 tools that we absolutely need to install from the moment we have our Cloud9 IDE ready. To install them, you just need to run commands in the terminal for your IDE. So as you might remember, our IDE has 3 parts to it. Here is the text editor. Here is the file navigator. And here's the terminal at the bottom. And we need to copy this code over here that is basically asking our terminal, hey, can you install Maven for me, please? And install it into this environment. And when I say this environment or this local environment, I am referring to the EC2 instance that is hosting our Cloud9 IDE. And if you're ever thinking that it's a bit hard to wrap your head around that whole concept of an IDE, an EC2 instance hosting like a Cloud9 IDE, like what does that actually mean? You can honestly think about it like your local computer that's sitting right in front of you. Right now, you probably have your computer that's running and also a browser that's running right now, like Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Firefox, Opera, lots of lots of different browsers. Now, you're going to realize that your browser is like a software and your computer is like that power that's running that software. And that analogy is very much what's happening in this scenario as well. We have an EC2 instance, which is like your computer, okay, that's running your software. And you can think of your Cloud9 IDE as the software that's running on the computer. And that is the reason why, even though we are launching an environment with Cloud9, there needs to be a computer that's running that software. And that computer is our EC2 instance. So that is why cloud computing is so powerful, because instead of having to use hardware or like buy a new computer to run your AWS Cloud9 environment, you could just use that EC2 instance. It's also in the cloud. We're literally doing cloud computing, and it's just so cool. All right, so during that whole yarn, I have installed Maven now. So I'm going to now install Java, or specifically Corvetto 8, run that in your terminal as well, and let it run, let it install. And it has been so much fun, honestly, doing these steps on repeat, because every single time you do it, you're going to pick up on something new. You're going to pick up on something new every single time. So it is worthwhile doing these steps again and again and again, all 7 times of it. I don't think you're ever going to run out of those learnings. So we're going to verify again that our installation processes have been done correctly by first verifying that Java has the correct version of it. We have the correct version installed. If you see 1.8.0, that means that you have the correct version installed. So that's perfect. And next thing is, let's have a check for Maven. Do we have the correct version of Maven installed? Do we? What do you see? If you see Apache Maven 3.5.2 over here, you have the right version of Maven installed. So that's perfect. Very nice. So let's create our application by running this code block here. Let's just copy that literally and paste that into the terminal. Watch it run like madness. And if you don't remember, what this piece of code was basically saying is, hi Maven, I just installed you. And I also just installed Java, my programming language. So Maven, my dear package manager, can you go and create the skeleton, the structure of a Java web app for me? I want you to use archetype, which is basically a template that you have for creating Java web apps. Use that to generate a web app for me. And Maven basically goes and says, okay, cool. Let me go and do that. And once Maven is done, you can literally see your work from the sidebar. So voila, you can see that a new folder has popped up in your file navigator. And all of these new folders have popped up. And this is basically Maven creating the skeleton, or like the structure of a new web app, a new Java web app for you. So that was awesome. Thank you very much. And we're going to start by modifying index.jsp in our project. So double click on index.jsp in the file navigator for yourself. And let us paste this code into index.jsp to start making this project, to start making this entire web app our own. Okay, so where it says your name, let's replace that with your actual name. So instead of hello your name, put in hello Natasha, or hello Erwin, or hello Mel. And don't forget to save your changes. So press Command S or Control S on your keyboard. And now we're ready to do the next project in this series, basically. So, whenever we're doing the setup parts for this web app, we're basically cycling through all of the previous projects in this series. We've basically just done project 1 of the series, and we're now onto project 2 of the series, which is to create that Git code commit repository. Now, lovely news, everyone. Skip this step if you've deployed your CloudFormation template. There are going to be steps that you can completely skip now, because your CloudFormation template, the thing that we ran earlier, has just deployed automatically for you. Whew, so it's smooth sailing from here. We can skip that step, but if you haven't used a CloudFormation template, you can absolutely follow these steps to quickly create a code commit repository yourself. Henry in the chat says, "Hi, Natasha. For a beginner, do I need to memorize these codes?" Erwin replies, "You only need to understand what it does, in my opinion." I completely agree with what Erwin's mentioned here. I think that code isn't always meant for like memorizing, because at the end of the day, in the real world, you're always going to have a reference point. And what Erwin means is like you just need to know what a piece of code does, so that when you're running it, you're kind of running it with confidence. Like you know what to expect once you run this. And I do think that that is the main part of like being an engineer and creating all of these like cool things, in the cloud, is that you have confidence in knowing what you're doing when you're creating these things. And if you don't know the answer to something, you are just familiar with figuring out how to find that answer. And you're going to notice that memorizing code isn't always the way to problem solve. It is a great way for answering exam questions, but it's not the way to go when you're actually in the real world working as a cloud engineer or doing these projects. I don't think that we ever ask you to memorize something when you're doing a project. We ask you to practice your skills and just continue doing. Memorizing doesn't go very, very far, really, when you're doing hands-on work. If there's ever a case for memorizing, I will absolutely come back to you on that, Henry. I will let you know. But nothing comes to mind off the top of my head. Maybe there will be some like basic commands like git that could be quite handy to know off by heart, but it's not something that you're going to want to memorize with flashcards. It's probably just something that you just know off by heart by doing a lot of. Cool. We're going to go and do our first commit. Very nice. And you're going to notice I never even had to switch tabs and go away. I could just go straight into the next step. I don't have to go find a code commit repository or anything like that, because that template has already deployed this resource for me. So already time has been saved. I didn't have to go off platform at all. And I'm going to set up my Git identity. So I'm going to go git config -- global user.name. And in your what is this called? Speech marks? You can type in your name. I looked really serious for a second there. I was very, very seriously trying to remember what this is called. And right after you set up your username, set up your email next. And that is using a very, very similar command, except you're using user.email. And you're going to put in your email in between the speech marks. Now, I think I did something wrong here, so I'm just going to quickly check. See, the reason why I thought something was wrong is because something says with get use default value when missing entry, and I feel like this doesn't really look like a successful response from our terminal. I feel like our terminal is trying to tell me something, so I'm going to scroll up and see what I did here. Oh, okay. So I've done something wrong where my command said git config -- global.email when it should have been git config -- global, and then it's user.email. So my terminal is basically saying, hey girl, I don't really know what you were typing in here. Global.email is not something I'm familiar with. So this is where I say, oh, sorry. Let me just type in the correct command. And hopefully I'm going to type it in right this time so that we don't get the same error twice. Perfect. Okay, I just typed in the command correctly this time, so no more error message, and we can keep going. The next command I'm going to type in is basically telling our terminal, can you please navigate to this folder called Network Web Project? And it does. The moment you see that blue text go from just environment to environment / Network Web Project, it means your terminal has now entered this folder. And Network Web Project is basically the folder that you can find over here as well. Just know that whenever Network Web Project is mentioned, we are talking about our project app right now. It is basically anything inside this folder is the code that represents our web app. Our web app code is all in this folder. So by telling the terminal to navigate into this folder, it's basically saying I'm about to do some commands that's going to relate to the setup or the creation of a few things like for my project app. So what is the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to set up a local repository. So I'm going to do git init b main. And I've initialized an empty Git repository. And that means I'm ready for my local workspace to connect with my code commit workspace in the cloud. So super exciting. Now let's select our code commit repository and clone its URL. We didn't have to visit the code commit repository to create our repository, so that was a good time saver. It also means it is now time for us to manually find code commit in our AWS console. And once you find it, you should see that the repository has already been created for us. All we need to do is clone the URL and select clone HTTPS. And this will copy the repository's URL to your clipboard. And let us set the remote origin in our terminal with that HTTPS URL that we just copied. So I'm going to use the command git remote add origin and paste the code in, and it reacts immediately. So by running that line just now, what I did was basically connect my local repository. And by local repository, I mean this local entire folder of code. Oh, this doesn't look very like what I want. Whoopsie daisies. There we go. Apologies for that, team. Just click on this folder icon if you ever lose your file like hierarchy or file navigator. But my local repository is basically this entire folder of files that represent my web app. And I want to connect this local repository, my local files, with my Google Drive folder, my code commit folder of project files. You're going to see that even though I've connected them now, what's happening is my Google Drive version of this folder has nothing in it. Hey, why is there nothing? I literally have folders and files inside this folder. Why is it? If you know the answer, type it into the chat. I'd love to see whether or not we've got to learn a few concepts from the first few project. But the answer you're also going to find right away. Ooh. Okay, so I'm here now. And Erwin says, you need to push your code to the repository. Bingo. We still need to save our code, which is like committing it, and then pushing that upstream. So pushing the changes that we've made up into that Google Drive repository, that code commit repository. So how you do that is you can just copy these 3 lines of code, paste it in your terminal. And these 3 lines of code are basically saying, hey, can you add all of my changes ready for saving, and then make all of the changes that I've made ready for saving, and then save those changes, leave a message with that save, and call it my initial commit. I basically updated index.jsp as a part of this big change that I've made, and push all of those changes I've made to that Google Drive folder, that code commit repository. So I've already run those 3 lines, and it was successful. So if I were to refresh my page, what do I see now? So I've refreshed my page, and you can see that my code commit repository successfully has the folder and the files that are in my local repository too. So that was a huge success, and it means that we are ready to move on to project 3 of this series, which is to create that code artifact domain and repository. I can absolutely skip this step because I have already deployed that code artifact domain and that code artifact repository with my CloudFormation template. All I need to do now is to connect my code artifact repository with my local workspace. So since the repository is already set up now with my CloudFormation template, I can connect it with my web app. How I do that is by looking for the connection instructions within my code artifact repository. So how you do that is you find code artifact in your left-hand navigation bar. So if you're wondering how it got here, I basically click this 3 lines here, and you can see code artifact is over here. So click on that, and you're going to see repositories over here. We're going to click on that, and we're going to find that your local packages, local repository, code artifact repository is over here. It's called Network Packages. Click on that. And you're going to view the connection instructions. All right, so let's view our connection instructions. Let's make sure Mac and Linux is chosen. Do you remember why? Mac and Linux is chosen because our EC2 instance that's hosting our Cloud9 IDE is a Linux computer. It's using Amazon Linux 2 as its platform, if you remember choosing Amazon Linux 2 just now. And our package manager client is Maven. We are pulling from our repository today, so we're going to keep that default setting. And I'm going to copy the code from step 3 of our connection instructions and paste that into my terminal. And you're going to see that there aren't like huge messages coming from the terminal, but absolutely, if you don't see anything major happening in there, that still means you're ready to keep going, to proceed with the next step, which is to fill in your settings.xml file. Oops. With a few lines of code as well. Now, the line that I just put through, the line that I'm about to put through, which is this code here, is to create a settings.xml file. Because look at this. Does that file exist yet? We need to populate a file called settings.xml to keep going. But that file doesn't exist yet. So copy the code that's inside in here and paste that in your terminal. Press enter. And it's done. You'll see all of a sudden now settings.xml exists. Oh my gosh, that was so quick. Double click on it as usual, and you're going to see it open up just over here in your code editor. So it's now ready for you to paste in some code. And you're going to find that code back in your code artifact console. And by basically copying everything in steps 4, 5, and 6 over here over to your settings.xml file. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste that in here. Same with the next one. Copy that, paste that in here. One more time, copy that, paste that in there, and we're done. Press Command S or Control S on your keyboard to make sure that you've saved your changes, and switch to the next step, which is after connecting your web app to code artifact, we're going to compile the application. We're going to compile the application by running this command, which is maven-s settings.xml compile. And we're going to put that through in the terminal. Okay, while that's compiling, let me give you a heads up that if you found that the last few steps were a bit too fast, if you're wondering, but what did the code in steps 4, 5, and 6 mean? Why am I even creating a settings.xml file? Those are some very valid questions. And we actually discussed them in depth in the video for project 3 of this series. So if you're wanting that in-depth explanation, I'd highly recommend checking out project 3. The link to that is in the description as well. Irwin says, I think it's a good idea to do a git status to see what files will be pushed. Ooh. Should we do that for the next one? Yeah, let's do that. So basically what Irwin is mentioning in the chat here is if before you enter git commit, you can use git status, or right after git commit, you can use git status to see what kind of files you've edited, in your latest commit and your latest changes. And you can just review, like, are these the files that I want to be changing before I push them into my Google Drive folder? Because sometimes you might have made a few changes, but you're like, oh, wait, that's not ready to be pushed up to the Google Drive folder. I want to keep working on this edit before I make that push. Because the moment it's pushed and someone else pulled your changes, they're going to get a copy of all of the changes you've made into their version of the app, into the code, into their local repository. So sometimes you might not actually want to push your changes so quickly. You want to keep working on it for a little bit before you push the final version. And that's where git status can be quite helpful. It gives you that review, is this stuff that I want to be pushing up into my Google Drive folder, into my CodeCommit repository? Or do I actually want to just push, 1 or 2 other files? Anyway, that compile was a great success. You will see build success over here, which means that we're ready for the next step. So if I were to just verify what is in my code artifact repository now, what do you think is going to be in there? I'm going to refresh this. And it looks so good. I'm so happy, everyone. You will see that there are 3 pages of packages ready for me. And that happened so quickly. I'm just so impressed. So what's happened is by compiling our application, Code Artifact has now saved backup copies of all of the dependencies, all of the packages that our web application needs in order to function properly. And this is really, really helpful for having this backup copy. Again, if you're a bit unfamiliar with Code Artifact and you want that in-depth explanation on why it exists and how it's useful, I'd highly recommend checking out Project 3 in the series. But that quick one-liner explanation is that dependencies or packages are basically external tools and resources that our web app needs in order to function correctly. It is basically like if I were to have a web app that is using a tool that another developer has used. For example, I need like a mapping function or a mapping tool. And I basically pulled this resource that's like, easily integrate like my map into your website to save yourself the time of having to create like an interactive web map from scratch. I'm like, great, let me just use that resource. I pull that in. And it's now like basically a resource that I depend on because I need that tool to be working properly for my map to be working properly on my website. So in order to basically secure or just basically cover your bases in terms of the risks that your web app might have. Imagine if that map tool suddenly one day gets shut down by the developer that created it. I'll be like, oh shoot, I need this map in order for my website to exist, to be working correctly. So thankfully, I have a backup version or a backup copy of that package in my Code Artifact repository, so I can always be using my Code Artifact backup instead of having to go out into the public and use that public version of the tool that I need. So such a great service to be knowing about, like Code Artifact. And if anything, it's just knowing what artifacts are, knowing that it's important to be keeping backup copies of them. Like those are some key learnings to be had about CI/CD pipelines or like being a cloud engineer. Okay, I know that was a big spiel, but I'm very, very excited to share that we can skip the next step, which is to set up the IAM policy for using Code Artifact. This is basically the policy that allows other services in our CI/CD pipeline to get access to our Code Artifact repository, to get access to all of these packages, because they're going to need access to these packages. For example, later on, Code Build will need access to these packages because Code Build needs to compress and compile all of the entire web application's code, all of these files into one package. And in order to do that compiling, in order to do that compressing, it's going to need access to the resources that it's going to be compressing together. If it doesn't have access, then, well, the WAR file that it creates is not going to be complete. It's not going to have everything that a web server needs to run your code or to host your website. And that's why we need this IAM policy to exist, so that other services like Code Build can have access to these resources. But since it's already been created by our CloudFormation template, we don't need to do that from scratch anymore. And same goes for our S3 bucket. This S3 bucket is the build artifact bucket. And what that means is when Code Build is done creating that WAR file for your web app, it's going to store that in your S3 bucket. And that's why we need this S3 bucket to exist. It absolutely needs to be around so that later on that WAR file has somewhere to live in. If you'd like to verify that it exists, absolutely, just visit your Amazon S3 console, click on buckets on the left-hand side, and you're going to see, do we see it? The Network Build Artifacts Natasha bucket is alive and kicking. It is ready for me to start storing some build artifacts. So why don't I go straight to the next step? Our Code Build project, again, is something that was already created by our CloudFormation template, so we can skip this too. And let's go straight into reviewing our Code Build project setup and then building our project for the first time. So you can find your Code Build project by heading back to your Code Artifact console, and in the sidebar, choose Code Build and choose Build Projects. And you're going to see that there's already a build project in here. But we still need to do a bit of editing. It's not ready for building just yet. Instead of clicking that beautiful Start Build button, I know it's orange, I know it's tempting, click on the Edit button instead. Okay, so like Edit at the top of the page. Because what we're going to do next is notice that the source panel has a few fields missing. Wow, the source panel says, okay, I know your code is storing in code commit, But which repository is it again? It is the Next Web project repository, so we're going to fill that in for them. And it's also asking, which branch are you using? There's only one branch, girl. It's the main branch. So we're going to select that for them as well. So once those two are selected, you can just click Update Project, and you've updated your code build project. Now, you might be wondering, why are those fields missing? And again, it just comes down to the limitations of using your CloudFormation template. And you might recall that when we were doing our CloudFormation project, using the ISC generator, we had to add our code build project into the template manually. It wasn't something that the ISC generator could create for us automatically. And this is a big reason why. Even if you've added it to your CloudFormation template, the resource that it creates is not complete. Absolutely, we still have to edit, we still have to add our resources before it is ready to start building. So now that it is complete, luckily, we can now create a build spec YML file, to define the commands for building the project. So we're going to go back to Cloud9, okay, and this time we're going to create a file called buildspec.yaml. Now, if you're wondering where in this project are we now, we're in project 5 of the series. So let us, I think we're in project 4 of the series. And let us create a new file in the root of our code repository. The root is here, the Next Web project folder. Right-click on that and select New File. And this is where you can create a new file called buildspec.yml. All right, once that's created, let's double-click on it. And let us fill in this file that's ready for us. Okay, it's looking beautiful. Copy that, paste that into your editor section. Okay, paste that in here. And you're going to notice that we still need to do a bit of customizing. Make sure that the domain it references is called Nextwork. And I can tell you that the domain for my code artifact domain is called Nextwork, so it looks pretty safe. But you can always verify it by finding domains in your left-hand navigation bar. And you're going to see, yes, Nextwork. Perfect. And the domain owner, this should be your account ID number. Is your account ID number correct? Find out by clicking on your name on the top right-hand corner in your management console and copy your account ID number, which is revealed over here. I love it when I can just easily copy it with this little button here. It's so convenient. So I clicked on that button and I can just paste it. And that is my account ID pasted in there now. Cool. Again, save your changes, okay? Don't forget, press Control S. Press Command S if you're using a Windows. And once you've saved those changes, commit your changes. But I also want to use what Erwin has mentioned in the chat. Maybe we can use git status as well. And once we've committed these changes, we are ready to build our project. So I'm going to very excitedly run these commands and hopefully make this a little bit bigger as well so you can see. Okay, so I have run this. Ooh, mama. It's looking a bit too big now, doesn't it? Let me just make this a bit smaller back. Hello. Oopsie daisies. I made it a bit too big just now, so I'm going to make it smaller one more time. Alrighty. And once here you go. And I'm just going to wrangle with my terminal for a little bit because I just want to make sure that I can actually make this slightly bigger so you can see what's happening in the terminal. I know this is looking a bit small right now. Okay, I hope this is better. Okay, so in my terminal, I'm also going to be using git add again, which is a great command to just basically say prepare all of my changes for saving. And should I use git status now? This is Erwin's suggestion. This is cool, Erwin. Wow, so I've just run git status, and look at that. It says the changes that you can commit. You've created a new file called buildspec.yml. Very true. I also created a new file called settings.yml. Yes, it is basically just giving me a recap of files that are ready to be saved. And when you're like, okay, yeah, this looks good, these are exactly the 2 files that I want to be saving, you can just commit that over. So git commit, adding buildspec.yml file, technically adding buildspec.yml and settings.yml file. And you can push those changes upstream using this line too. Actually, after the first time you put git push -u origin main, the next time you don't actually need to run the whole line. This is a small tip. You can just write git push, and ideally it's already going to remember where is your repository. So I think I just pushed that very successfully, and I'm ready for the next step. Wow, that git status was awesome. Thank you so much. Again, a step for us to skip if you've already deployed your CloudFormation template. But the next step, we were going to be creating an IAM role to make sure that code build has all of the necessary permission it needs to use those code artifact resources. Remember how just on code artifact, I was saying, look, like even code build doesn't have all of access to your code artifact repository. And that's why we need to give it code build permission through an IAM role. Since that role has already been created for us, we can skip this step and go straight into building our project for the first time to test the build. So I'm going to test the build by finding code build over here and build my project for the first time. So let us start the build and watch it run. Now, I have to say, building takes a bit of time. A bit of time being 1 minute or 2 minutes. So we're going to wait here. Knowing that CloudFormation deployed all of those resources for me in 1 second makes me a very, very demanding person. Because even 1 minute feels like a long time sometimes. And I have to say, maybe I'm just super spoiled because of how fast cloud computing and all of these services work. To make me feel impatient by 1 minute, I'd say AWS is doing a very good job of having all of their resources fast enough for 1 minute to feel long. But I think now is a great time for us to take a quick water break or a quick tea break. While we wait for the status for code build to go from in progress to success. Actually, while that's happening, we can have a peek at what we need to do next, shall we? Because once that build is done, we have pretty much finished with part 4 of the project series, and we'd be entering project 5 territory. And project 5 territory was using code deploy. And code deploy is the service, the AWS service that helps with making our web app available to the world, right? Because we have used code commit to save our source code into a very, very secure code repository, that Google Drive folder in the cloud. We have just used code build to compile our web app. It was a huge success, by the way, so thank you. To compile our code, and compiling basically means turn all of my web app's code into machine language and compress all of that machine language into a handy file. That handy file is the golden nugget for the next part of this project, which is code deploy. So, sorry about that sound, team. I'm going to visit my code artifact bucket. Not my code artifact bucket, sorry, my build artifacts bucket. Refresh it, and you're gonna see, this is what I want to see. My build artifact is now in my build artifacts bucket. This is the very first WAR file that my code build project has produced for me today. So thank you very much, code build. Thank your code build if your code build has created that file for you as well. Thank you for your service, because we're now ready for project 5 of this series, which is about code deploy. And the first thing that we're going to do is understand what code deploy is doing. Just now, we just mentioned code build's entire purpose basically is to compile our web app's code into that handy, compile our web app's code and then compress it, transform it into a handy file called a WAR file, which is basically this zip file. And once that's done, we want to now deploy that WAR file, this file that's been created, deploy it on another server And that server is basically going to make your web app available to the world. Available to the world basically means if you were to type in my URL on your browser, you can see my web app too. So that's pretty cool. How we're going to make that happen is by first creating the EC2 instance that will be eventually hosting our web app. Okay, right now there's no server out there that's going to be hosting our web app. So we need to create that server. And we're going to be doing that by using CloudFormation one more time. So in your CloudFormation console, okay, when you're in CloudFormation, create a stack again. So visit stacks in your left-hand navigation bar and create a new stack again using new resources. You're probably familiar with this by now. And select upload a template file once you get to the specified template panel. So which file are we going to be using today? It is this one, the one that's already provided for us. Right-click on this, or you can actually just click on it directly. Yeah, there we go. That's perfect. It's worked. And we're going to upload that template file straight into our stack. So I'm going to upload it now. And I'm going to click Next. And I'm going to name my stack. Okay. And then under parameters, I'm going to make sure that I enter my IP address. So I'm going to click on Check IP here to find my IP address. Okay, this looks very nice. This is my IP address, everyone. Hello. And make sure to enter /32 at the end here for extra security. Once you've added the 32, click Next. And we're going to go to the bottom. Click Next again. At the bottom here, we're going to, again, say IAM. It is okay that you're going to be creating a new role. CloudFormation, it's okay for you to be creating a new IAM role for me. I'm okay with that. And once you acknowledge it, you can press Submit. And again, CloudFormation is going to be doing its work. Thank you, CloudFormation, and creating our EC2 instance for us. It's also going to be creating a VPC. VPC is basically a virtual private cloud. It is the service in AWS that basically makes sure that anyone visiting the internet and typing in your web app's server's name or your URL can actually get taken to your web app. So VPCs are extremely important. The topic as a whole is called networking, and we're absolutely going to be diving a bit deeper into what networking actually means and what virtual private clouds really do in another project. For now, just know that it plays a very, very important role to make sure that anyone using the internet to visit your web app can actually get there. Let's refresh our events page. And yes, our EC2 instance has been created very, very successfully. And you can confirm that it's worked by visiting the EC2 console. So you can type in EC2 in the search bar. And over here, you can find your EC2 instance. And your instance is running. There should be one instance that's running. Oh, there should be two, actually. I'm going to make sure that this has been created. It's telling me that it's been created well. Oh, does it need another refresh? I think it does. Our web server is still in progress. Sorry, it hasn't been created yet. I was a bit too excited. But once our web server has actually successfully created as well, then we can absolutely see it in the EC2 console. For now, though, this existing EC2 instance, can you remember what it could be? Can you tell me what it could be? If you can, wow, that's super impressive. I'll be very, very happy. This EC2 instance that's existing in the EC2 console right now is the EC2 instance that's hosting our Cloud9 IDE. It's the computer that's running this Cloud9 IDE right now. So cool. I'm so excited to be seeing it right now. Someone is spamming hearts in the chat, so shout out to that person. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to refresh the events page one more time. Very nice. Our web server has created successfully as well. So if I were to refresh this, can I see it? Please say yes. I can. So this web server is our EC2 instance that's going to be hosting our web app and making it available to the world. You're going to see this in action in just a second. So before we spend too much time here, let's move on to the next step. And let us create a few bash scripts. Hey, Isaac. Isaac in the chat says, well done, Natasha. It's Isaac. Whoop, whoop. So exciting that you're here, man. Thank you so much. All right. So we're going to, in our, again, the root repository, the root of our code repository, create a new folder. And this one is going to be called scripts. So let me just type in scripts in here. And let me enter create 3 new files under scripts. So my first file is going to be called, do you remember the name by any chance? It's going to be called install dependencies.sh. Nice. And let me just paste that code in here. Oof, very cool. Very, very cool. I'm going to paste that code in here. Oof, if only my mouse would cooperate with me, though. There we go. It's kind of cooperating now. Is it? Is it really? Not really. Oh, okay, there we go. It's cooperating with me now. So if I were to just double click on the install dependencies.sh file, I can paste my code in here. And voila, the code has successfully gone from here all the way into here. Very nice. Save your changes. Press Command S, press Control S. Save yourself from future issues by saving as you go. Create another new file under scripts. And this one is going to be called start server.sh. One more time. And let us again copy the code that was in here and paste that on the start server.sh. All right. Very, very cool. Press Command S, press Control S. Let's save those changes. And let's create one last file under scripts. And this one is going to be called stop server.sh. Ooh, interesting. Let me rename this into stop server.sh. And let us copy this code over, paste that in here, save your changes, don't forget to save, and stop. Does your scripts folder have all 3 files? Install dependencies, start server, and stop server. If it has, congrats. I think you're ready to move on to the next step. So let us get ready for the next step. Wow, City says, hi, Natasha. It's City. Loving the live session. City, welcome. Wow. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here. And thank you so much for all the love. Really, thank you so much. A big shout out to you. In our next step, we're going to be, again, at the root of our code repository, create a new file. This one is going to be called appspec.yaml. So over here, let us create a new file. Let the name be appspec.yaml. Okay, over here. And we're going to add the following lines to our appspec.yaml file over here. By the way, if you're wondering, can I have more in-depth explanations to what each of these files are doing and why they exist? The explanations to those are available in Project 5 of our series. So I'd highly recommend checking out the video for that. The link to that is in the description. And save the changes that you've made by pressing Command S or Control S. Erwin in the chat says, no need to make the SH files executable. Oh, you're going to see how we're going to execute those files in a second. Actually, I think you're seeing it right now, actually, with the appspec.yaml file here. And the way that we basically says before you install anything, use the install dependencies file. You know, when you start your application, run these scripts, run start server.sh. And so on and so forth. Does that answer your question? Let me know if not. We can actually chat more about this. And you know, once I have filled out my buildspec.yaml file, I am ready to, appspec.yaml file. So sorry, I was meaning once you have copied your code into appspec.yaml, let us edit buildspec.yaml file. Okay, so in buildspec.yaml, this is the part where you're going to be adding 2 new lines to it. Mystery 2 new lines. You're going to copy these 2 new lines. Copy. And you're going to paste them underneath the files section. So over here, you're going to enter in here. these two new files. So you might be wondering, why am I doing this? These two need to be recognized in order for your build spec to basically include all of the files that your WAR file needs to include. Now, that was a pretty technical line. That was a pretty technical sentence that I said just now, so let's break it down. Do you remember what buildspec.yaml is for? Buildspec.yaml is basically the file that your code build project is going to be referring to in order to run that build process. And during the build process, it needs to realize, what are the artifacts that I'm creating? What are the outputs that I need to be producing? And one of those outputs we've mentioned is to save a WAR file, that zip file for the web app project code. But there's also two more files that we need to make sure that it saves now. One is appspec.yaml, which is the file that we created just now. This file here. And the other file is the scripts folder with these 3 scripts inside. We want to make sure that the final zip package that our code build process creates incorporates these 2 new files in it as well. We just created it, so code build doesn't know that they exist yet. But in this file, we're going to say, hey, by the way, I created these 2 new files. Remember to include them when you build the project and you create that zip file, because I absolutely need you to bring these 2 files over to the web server that's about to be hosting my web app. So save again your changes to your files, and let's again commit all of those changes to code commit. I am loving Erwin's tip, by the way, of using git status. So we're going to be doing that one more time. All right, in your terminal, cool. In your terminal, let us run the first line, first 2 lines, which is to make sure that we are preparing all of the files and all of the changes we've made ready for saving. And let's use git status, the new tip I've learned today, to have a look at all of the files that I've changed just in between the 2 commits that I've just made and the commit I'm about to make now. What are the changes that I've made recently? I've created a new file. I've created 4 new files, correct? I've also changed buildspec.yaml. Wow, what a great recap. So helpful. So I'm saying, okay, yeah, I'm ready to be saving these changes. These are the changes I'm wanting to save. Then I'm ready to run git commit to say, yep, let's save those changes. And I'm going to leave that message adding code deploy files as the message for saving my changes. And I'm going to do git push to push those changes upstream into where? Where are those changes getting pushed to? My code commit repository. That would be the right answer. So now that all of those changes are pushed through to my code commit repository, we're now ready to build our project one more time using code build. So I'm going to go here in code build and click on build projects. And let us build the project one more time. Start the build one more time. And as you might remember, building takes a bit of time. So we're going to drink some water and just do a quick recap of what's happened so far. Emmanuel in the chat says, hello, Natasha. Hi, Emmanuel. Thank you for being here. All right. So what is happening so far is we've created a web app from scratch using Cloud9. We've created a Git repository using code commit to basically have that Google Drive folder on the cloud. And that Git commit repository is the source code that code build is using to build, to compile our code and turn it into a WAR file. Okay, this is a pretty important part. This is a pretty important thing to be remembering. When I start my build, do you remember how I just pressed start build just now? When I press that button, what code is code build actually compiling? Is it the code that's in my Cloud9 local repository? No, it's not. Okay, code build is not going into my Cloud9, is not going in here. It's not going into my Cloud9 console and compiling the code that I'm editing like in my local repository. So what code is it compiling? The code that it's compiling is the code that's living inside my code commit repository. Okay, the Google Drive folder that this like cloud version of my source code. If I click into my code commit repository, you're going to see that a copy of all of the changes that I've made is in here because I've committed those changes and I push it upstream. I ran this line and I ran this line as well, which basically saved all of my changes up into code commit. And code build is actually visiting code commit to grab all of these files here and go and compile them into a WAR file. Okay, and that WAR file is the entire reason why we will press start build in code build. The reason why we go into this code build project over here and we will press start build is basically saying, hey, code build, can you go into code commit, grab all of the code that you see there, go to code artifact. Okay, please go to code artifact. The repository that I have, my local repository, has all of the packages and dependencies for my work. Go and grab all of these dependencies, grab my code commit repository's code, compile it all into one file, and store that one file into my S3 bucket over here. Okay, so if I refresh, what's going to happen? Oh, it's not done yet. But what's going to happen is when my build is succeeded, okay, it's succeeded. Can I find my file? Oh, let's see. Can I find the file? I should be able to. If I can't, we will figure out why. Very interesting. Okay, so what has happened is code build has successfully gone into code commit. It's successfully gone into code artifact. It's brought all of the files together. It's created a WAR file, and that WAR file should be stored in an S3 bucket. And from that S3 bucket, it needs to be thrown all the way into code deploy so that code deploy can go and deploy that project, make it available to the world. And the reason why we just went into here, created a few files, and it went to code build to build again, is because we wanted to make sure that this has all of the files that code deploy is going to need and run. And then since we've made some changes, we want to make sure that we create a new WAR file to deploy. We need to run code build one more time because we've made some changes in Cloud9, and we want to run and make a new version, make a new WAR file that has all of these changes incorporated inside. Because the first WAR file that we created is outdated now. It doesn't have all of these new files that included in it. We want to make a new WAR file that has incorporated all of these new changes. And that's why we just ran the start build one more time after committing our changes. And it looks like the build was successful. So that's amazing. Looking really good. And you can even go into reports if you want, if there are anything that we want to see. Everything looks successful in here. So that's awesome. And it means we're ready for the next step. So the next step is to create an IAM role for code deploy. So let us visit IAM in code deploy over here. And let us create a new role. So I'm going to open the code, the IAM console. But actually, if you want, roles is already here as a little shortcut. So I can just click on roles right away from here and create a new role. So when I click create role over here, the AWS service that I'm creating this role for is code deploy over here. And code deploy, click next. It already has a permission policy that AWS has created for me. It's like a template policy. That is the only policy we need. So click next again. And give our role a name. It should have a name called next with code deploy role. Done. Click create role to finish, and you're off. You're ready. Okay, so that role has been created now. It basically means code deploy has the permission to access all of the resources that it needs to successfully host my web app. And what I need, not to successfully host my web app, sorry, but to successfully do the entire deployment process for me. And you're going to see that in action very, very soon. So we're going to head to the code deploy console, and we are going to create an application inside code deploy. So over here, I'm going to click on create application, and I'm going to name my application Network Web Deploy. I'm going to put that here, and my compute platform is going to be EC2. I'm going to create the application, and I'm going to create a deployment group inside, which is going to be called Network Web Deploy over here. And the service role is going to be the code deploy role that I just created in IAM. Came in handy super quick. And let's create the, let us create the deployment type. It is in place. The environment configuration should be Amazon EC2 instances with a tag that is called role. The value of that should be web server. And let us make sure that over here, this says now and schedule updates, okay? Every 14 days. This should be kept as default all at once. And I'm gonna uncheck the enable load balancing feature to create my deployment group. I know I zoomed past that very, very quickly. It's because we went through all of those details in project 5 of this series. So definitely check out that video. The link to that is in the description as well. So once I have created my deployment group, I can create my deployment now. So in my newly created deployment group, I can just click on create deployment over here. And for the revision location, we will need to find the S3 URI for our zip file. So let's go over here. Let's copy the S3 URI for our zip file over here. And let us paste it under revision location. By the way, as a heads up, you might be wondering, Nat, like, why is it only just one zip file in here? We ran the build process twice. Why is it that we only have one zip file? The reason for that is because when code build created another build artifact, that build artifact that got created replaced the existing one. You can see that last modified over here was 10 minutes ago. Yeah, it was less than 10 minutes ago. It was 8 minutes ago, which means that it is already updated to the latest version of the latest build, because the latest build would have finished only just 8 minutes ago. And that means that the build artifact that got created from the latest build completely replaced the original file that was in this bucket. So if you're wondering why there was only one object, that's the reason why. There's only ever going to be one object in this bucket, and it's just going to be constantly updated to the latest version instead of having all of the existing versions in the exact same bucket. I hope that was clear, but if it wasn't, please let me know in the chat. We can talk about this a bit more as well. So over here, we're going to also make sure that .zip is kept as the revision file type and leave the other settings as default, because we're going to go straight into creating our deployment. So cool. So once the deployment is created, let's come check. Let's go check the status of this. Gonna wait for it to be successful. Let's wait for our deployment to be successful, and I hope it's okay. Please work. So what's happening right now in this deployment process is that build artifact, this zip file, is being deployed onto the EC2 instance that we created for hosting our web app. So you know this file over here, this EC2 instance, this EC2 instance was created for the sole purpose of hosting our web app. And how it's hosting it right now is that this build artifact, the zip file of the entire project app code, as well as all of those artifacts in code artifact, they've all like compressed together into this cool zip file, and it's now being basically hosted into our EC2 instance over here. And code deploy is basically the manager of that process. It's doing that project process for us. So how's code deploy doing? It says it's still installing the application on our instances, and it's in progress. So we'll wait for it to work. If it fails, that's okay. We'll figure out why it failed. But the deployment process usually shouldn't take this long, actually. It should usually be about like 30 seconds or 45 seconds. So the fact that it's taken me this long and it's still in 0% tells me that we might run into a fail very soon, which is okay. I think fails happen all the time. It's just a matter of reading the error message and fixing what we've done, if it comes to that. Okay. We'll see what happens. Very, very suspicious. We'll see what happens. But if it was successful, okay, if it was successful, all we'll have to do is click on our EC2 instance and visit the public address for our instance. And what that means is this public address means that any device that's allowed access to your EC2 instance can view what's hosted on that EC2 instance if they just visit this address on their browser. So I could literally click open address over here. Open address over here. If that didn't work, you can just copy this over here, and in the new page, type in http:// paste in the public IPv4 address to visit what's hosted on your web app. But as you can see, my web app that's been hosted on your web server. As you can see, my web app hasn't been deployed yet, which is why my web server is like, I have nothing to show you, which is why it's still loading. That's okay. Has our code deploy come back with a message for us? Not yet. So let me just refresh this because I'm a little bit impatient now. Oh, code deploy is still doing its thing. If you have picked up that I've made an error somewhere so far in this project, let me know. Maybe we can actually resolve this before code deploy drops us any error messages. It's taking an interestingly long time, that's for sure. I hope it's okay. But yeah, so if that deployment was successful, you can actually visit this IPv4 address over here, and you can see the web app that's been created for you. I hope that works. Should I stop my deployment and try to do it again? Is that before install error, says DKAMX? Could it be? By the way, hi DKAMX, it's good to see you again. Could be. Let us see what's going on. I'm actually very curious. Why is the deployment happening so quick? Why is this taking so long? So let me visit this and see if there's anything happening here. I think usually when there's an error, by the way, with my code, the first thing I like to do is just make sure that I've saved the changes that I've made to everything in here. So I'm just gonna leaf through all of the files that are open right now, just to make sure all of the changes I've made are saved somewhere. Okay. Oh, it looks like buildspec.yml wasn't actually saved. What? Hello? Oh, look, there's a circle here for buildspec.yml, which suggests to me that it wasn't actually saved. Should I save this and try it again? Would that be worth it? I think it could be. I think this could be it. So I'm going to press Command S here, which basically saves buildspec.yml, save the changes that I've made, and let me visit all of the other tabs just to make sure I've saved all the other changes I've made. Wow, suspicious. Did you see that circle pop up for buildspec.yml? It really suggests that the latest changes weren't saved. So that's pretty suspicious. And I'm just gonna run my git commands to make sure any changes that were somehow just saved are now pushed up to my code commit repository. Okay, so I'm gonna do git add dot, you know the drill. Let us check git status. Oh, it says my branch is up to date, so there's actually no new changes. That's suspicious. It seems like that I had changes that I needed to save with build spec. So I am still going to just check this anyway. Interesting. I'm still going to just go git commit, just so that we can run through this entire process together. So git commit, I'm going to say my commit message is updated buildspec.yml. That's the command that I would run if I had made changes. Enter that. Okay, it says nothing to commit. The working tree is clean. So there aren't any new changes. What's happening with my deployment? Okay. Okay, cool. We have something now. This is interesting. Our deployment code deploy says the overall deployment failed because too many individual instances failed deployment. Okay, too few healthy instances are available for deployment, or some instances in your deployment group are experiencing problems. That's okay. I think a failure was basically something that we were all looking a little bit expecting of. We were expecting this pretty much. The code deploy was not able to receive the lifecycle event. Check the code deploy agent logs on your host and make sure the agent is running and can connect to the code deploy server. Did I do something wrong when I was trying to set up my deployment group? Let us figure this out. Code deploy agent was not able to receive the lifecycle event. Interesting. I wonder why. Shall we have a check? I think we shall. So let us click into this unknown error within build install. Again, it says check the code deploy agent. I'm going to, Erwin says maybe check your before install line. Yeah, maybe I should do that actually. I see what you mean now. So I'm gonna go here and see what I can find inside appspec.yml and see what is inside before install. So my before install has a few lines in it. Can we see what could be wrong with it? I'm going to compare it with what is expected of my appspec.yml file and see if there's anything that should be a little different to what's here. What do we think, team? I think something looks a bit off. Is something off with the indentation? Does anyone else think the indentation looks a bit off? Okay. I'm gonna, my money is betting on the indentation. I could be completely wrong, but let me just check. I'm gonna cross-check this by checking the same instructions for this project, but using the project 9 of the series and the code that was shared in project 9. Did my before install line look different? It did! Oh my goodness, what? Look at this. This is not indented, but in my code deploy project, this absolutely was. So let me just put in the indented version. Could it be because of this? Did an indentation cause my deployment to fail? Goodness me. Goodness me. Let me save the changes that I've made to my buildspec.yml file. Oh my goodness, was that really the reason? And let me commit those changes now. Git add dot git status, because I'm addicted to that line now. Yep, it confirms with me that I've changed a few things with appspec.yml. And let me commit those changes. Git commit -m for message. What did I change? I updated appspec.yml. And I am going to push my changes upstream. Git push. Done. Okay, so I've pushed my changes. And what that means is, again, you're going to make sure that inside your code commit repository, that whatever is in your code commit repository should be correctly reflecting what was in your local working space as well. So if I were to go into build spec, I think I meant app spec there. Oh my goodness, that was so funny. If I were to go into app spec, yes, my before install line is now properly indented as well in my code commit repository in my Google Drive folder. So what that means is my code build, if I were to build it now, I think my changes should be successfully represented there. So let me build my project one more time because I need to be building, my code build should be compiling the latest version of my project app code. And I absolutely need to be compressing the latest version of appspec.yml. If I were to use the existing code artifact file, sorry, not code artifact file, my build artifact, then I would be, again, just passing the exact same incorrect version of appspec.yml over to code deploy. That would have caused an error. That would have caused the same error. So let's not do that. And let's make sure that we're building again so that we are using the latest version of appspec.yml when we deploy our web app. Oh my goodness, that has honestly caught me off guard. Thank you so much, Erwin. Thank you so much, DKAMX. Thank you so much, Suprio. A YAML validator would have absolutely helped. Erwin has called that out. DKAMX says refer to the example from AWS. That's so true. Would you happen to have a link to that you'd like to share? That would be pretty cool. And I think a lot of the community would learn from that too. Oh my goodness, that was wild. So the building is happening one more time, so we're going to let that just run its course. And in the meantime, let us just have a chat about this entire process that needs to take place whenever I made a change. Just now, I made a change to my Cloud9, the local repository in Cloud9 over here. I updated my appspec.yml. So I had to commit my change so that the changes are reflected in code commit. I have to go into code build and build those changes. I built my web app one more time. And now I have to go to code deploy one more time to try deploy my application again. So my goodness, do you think that's a bit of a process? If you think it does, if you think it is like a bit of a chore, that's absolutely fair. Let's just discard those changes. I'm going to go back to the deployment that has happened before, this one that failed, and I'm going to retry this deployment. Okay, let's see if it works now. Cool. Let's see if this one works now. Will it work? Let's see. Oh, the most recent event again is before install. Do you think it's using the wrong version? Mayhaps. Alrighty. In fact, it is succeeded. Oh, the deployment was succeeded. Whew, that's a relief, isn't it? Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone in the chat that helped me with resolving that error. Oh, that was a little bit intense, but we have solved it. Oh, that is a good feeling. Honestly, not many feelings can beat that, being able to resolve an error. So thank you so much to everyone in the chat that's helped with resolving that. And let's move on to the next step. So now that we have successfully deployed our application, I think what that means is we can now visit over here our EC2 instance's public IPv4 address. Remember how I typed it in HTTP and I put in the public IPv4 address over here? I went over here, I copied the public IPv4 address, I pasted in here, I put an HTTP in the front. And let me just visit that one more time and see if I can visit my web app now. Can I? Does it work? I hope it does. That'll be cool. Alrighty. Okay, so that was a success, getting the deployment to be working now. And let's see if we can actually see it in our EC2 instance's IPv4 address. I hope it works. Does it work? It's taking its sweet time, which tells me it's a bit slow. Okay, so if you're seeing an error over here, you can absolutely update the security group of your EC2 instance. So how I do it is over here under security. I'm just going to visit my security group's inbound rules over here. And the source tells me it is basically allowing all visits from this IP address. So I'm going to check my IP address. Aha, my IP address has changed. It used to be 104.28.29.66, but I just refreshed my IP address checker, and my IP address has changed from 0.66 to 0.65. Do you know what that means? That means my EC2 instance is allowing all visits from this IP address, but I am not that IP address anymore. I need to update my security group so that it allows my new IP address through. My goodness, that was a bit tricky, wasn't it? But it's okay, we've just resolved it. All I need to do is visit my security group, and inside inbound rules, I'm going to edit the inbound rule and make it then my new IP address over here. Okay, once I've edited that over here, I'm good to go to save this new rule. Okay, and then refresh this address over here. And hopefully it lets me see my web app now. Okay, so that was a great success. Whew, that was very cool. So code deploy project 6 of the series is all done now. Very well, very, very good. And if you're wondering why is it that my IP address could change, why did I need to update it in that security group? We're going to go over that at the end of this project, because this situation might happen one more time at the end of this project. So we're going to talk about this at the end altogether at once. But what you need to know is if you ran into the same complication as me just now, what you have to do is you have to update the inbound rules for your security group to make sure that your latest IP address, because it might update itself, just make sure that the latest IP address is accepted. Cool beans. So now that that's done, let us finally go on ahead into CodePipeline. So with our working web application, we are going to be using CodePipeline to automate all of those integrations between some of those key steps. We had code build, code deploy, we had code commit as well at the very start. And remember how we had to basically commit our changes in Cloud9 and push them to the Git repository. We have to build our application. We have to deploy it so that any change that I make to my code can finally be seen over here for the users looking at my web app. It's a bit of a manual process. Did you see how many clicks I had to click on? How many buttons I had to click on in order to make that process work? With CodePipeline, let's automate these steps. So as soon as you push your changes to the main branch, CodePipeline will automatically take care of building and deploying the application. This makes the process so much faster and reduces the chances of error, which is so good. Yay! And that's why we use CodePipeline. CodePipeline is a service, to automate those steps. And when we use CodePipeline to create that automated CI/CD pipeline, all of the steps that I did just now, that jumping between code commit to code build to code deploy to release my latest changes, I don't need to make those clicks anymore. It gets done for me. It's super, super useful. So to set up my pipeline, I'm going to visit CodePipeline over here in the sidebar. Select pipelines over here. Nice. And I'm going to click on Create Pipeline. Now on the Create Pipeline, I'm going to select Enter Network Web Pipeline as my pipeline name over here. And I'm going to make sure that my execution mode is superseded. And I use superseded because my web app, our web app, is so simple. It doesn't need any complicated pipeline type execution mode. So execution mode, what we're choosing over here, it is basically deciding how CodePipeline will run multiple executions of your pipeline. This kind of scenario is going to pop up if you have a whole team of developers constantly pushing their own changes to the code, and that means your pipeline is going to get executed each time. And execution is basically a run of that pipeline process. And whenever someone commits their code, your pipeline is going to execute once. It's going to run once. So knowing that in a big team, we want to be continuously integrating, we want to be continuously committing our code, that means executions are happening all the time, sometimes probably at the same time. And that's why there are multiple of these modes available. It's like, hey, if you have lots of executions happening probably at the same time, how do you want me to run it? And we're basically saying use superseded. So only run the latest commit. Like only run the version of the code that exists at the latest commit. You don't need to run every single commit that happens. So that's super, super helpful and super, super simple. But queued and parallel are definitely some great options if you have a more complex situation going on with more team members. We have a new service role that's now created for us, and we want to make sure that role, called our code pipeline service role, is going to have it's going to give CodePipeline all of the necessary permission it needs to run successfully later. So we're going to come back to this in a second. And once you leave all those other settings as default, we're going to click on Next. And we're now at the source stage. So what we've created just now over here is just some generic pipeline settings on how we want to run executions of our pipeline. But once all of these settings are done, we're just going to be actually setting up the different stages of our pipeline. So we know how our pipeline is going to be run now, but what are the actual components of that pipeline? Let us kind of like add in those building blocks. The first thing is our source, and our source provider should be AWS CodeCommit, because source is basically saying, oh yeah, where is the source code getting stored? And we're saying, oh yeah, it's stored in CodeCommit in the repository called Network Web Project. And please just use the version of the code that's inside the main branch of that repository. And in terms of our detection options, we're going to be using Amazon CloudWatch events. In terms of the output artifact format, we're going to be using CodePipeline default. Great. And I'm going to click on Next over here. But before we click on Next, actually, let's quickly talk about what are detection options and artifact format anyway. Detection options setting is basically how CodePipeline will figure out when something has changed in your source code. Because don't forget, CodePipeline is supposed to run automatically. So how does it know when it should be running? That is basically what the detection option the change detection option. So it needs to react automatically to any change that happens in your source code. But how is it going to know that a change has happened in your source code? It's going to know because we have CloudWatch events monitoring everything. And basically, when CloudWatch events, and CloudWatch is another AWS service that's basically all about monitoring everything that happens in your account. When CloudWatch picks up, oh, there's been a change to your code in your repository, a commit has happened. Code commit has updated itself. Oh, like these are some key events. Let me trigger, like nudge CodePipeline and tell CodePipeline, hey, you should be running right now, because I just sensed like a change. If we were to pick another option, which is the AWS CodePipeline, this is basically a simpler version that basically just triggers a check, look for a check every so often, periodically. But CloudWatch events basically responds instantly to any event, whereas the CodePipeline might wait a few more minutes, a few more hours before it finally runs. And the output artifact format is we're just going to be using the CodePipeline default, which basically packages up artifacts in the most efficient way possible in zip files between the stages. For example, the source code from code commit is going to be packaged up into a zip file for code build. The build artifacts that code build produces also in a zip file before it gets taken to code deploy. And that's why we use our CodePipeline default, because it makes sure that everything is packaged in a zip file, exactly how we want it to be. So let's press next, and let us now configure our build stage. If you remember what the source stage provider was, code commit, you probably should know what the build stage provider is. Yep, it's code build. So we just need to make sure we're using the same region so that we can choose the correct code build project. And yep, the build type should be a single build. So let us choose next after that. And our deploy provider, have a guess. Who do you think is our deploy provider? Who do you think is currently managing the deployments for our web app? I'm hoping that you said code deploy, because that was absolutely the service that we were using to create our application, create our deployment group, create the deployment. The application name was Nextweek Web Deploy. And the deployment group is going to be, again, Nextweek Web Deploy. So once that is set up, we basically just told our pipeline, hey, by the way, here are the different, basically the different parts of my pipeline that I visit whenever I want to deploy a change. So now that CodePipeline knows that this is the flow of things, we're going to watch it run for the first time. So here is basically CodePipeline saying, can you just review all of these settings that you've just set up? Just tell me everything looks correct. And then you can create your pipeline. So satisfying, isn't it? I'm just going to skip through the steps that we've just gone through together. Wow, perfect. And there we go. The whole pipeline is now running for the first time. Oh my goodness, this is our first time in the CodePipeline console together. I'm so excited. You can see that it's running now. And what does it actually mean to be running? When the pipeline is running, it means your CI/CD pipeline is in action. You're watching your code being automatically built, automatically tested, automatically deployed to your AWS environment step by step. So this is basically the whole reason why CodePipeline exists, to set up this integration between code commit, code build over here, and code deploy, so that they can basically run together automatically in one go without me having to click between them. So what that means now, because I've already set up this integration, is now when I make a change to my source code in Cloud9 and I commit those changes, I no longer need to go to build, to a code build to click on start build. I no longer need to go to code deploy to click on create deployment, because basically those clicks are done for me now by CodePipeline. Very, very cool. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a screenshot of our CodePipeline console showing this pipeline to start writing a documentation. So let me take a screenshot over here right now. Woof, done. And let us add that to our documentation. So over here, let us paste that over here into this box. And I'm going to double click on this to move my file closer to the left-hand edge so that you can see the whole thing. You can see my pipeline in that little screenshot. Looks pretty good. Yeah, it looks pretty good. And I'm going to type in my documentation notes. So a CI/CD pipeline is a practice of continuous integration, continuous deployment, this makes sure that changes made to source code is constantly being integrated, updated in a shared Git repository, so that other developers working from the same code base are always using the latest version of the code. Very cool. Brackets, this is what continuous integration means. It also makes sure that end users are always seeing the latest version or updates to an application. And in brackets, that's basically what continuous deployment is all about. Okay. Very cool. Just like that. Nice. To set up a CI/CD pipeline in CodePipeline, I configured 3 stages. The source stage, which means the source code for my web app. This is currently stored in code commit. The build stage, which means the service that is managing the build process for my web app. This is code build. And then we have the deploy stage. And the deploy stage means the service that is managing the deployment process for my web app, i.e. making my web app available to the world. This is code deploy. Fantastic. I think that we've done a good job over here. It looks pretty good. I think I'm going to add a bit more detail to what the build stage actually does because I think it deserves a little bit more detail. So I'm going to add that over here. In brackets, I'm going to add, in brackets here, I'm going to add, i.e. compiling and packaging my web app code into a handy WAR file. Very nice. I'm very, very happy with my documentation. I think we're ready for the next step. So in my next step, let me swap these around one more time. In my next step, I'm now going to release a change. So how we're going to release a change is we're going to edit basically what our web app looks like. We're going to see our code pipeline, automate saving those. Once we save those changes, we're going to see our code pipeline, automate those integrations between code commit, code build, code deploy. So we're going to pretty much automatically see a change in our web server, what our web server is serving to us right after we commit some changes. So this is going to be really cool. How I'm going to do this is I'm going to right click and download some HTML files over here. So I'm going to save the link as an HTML file. Okay, save this. And I'm going to update index.jsp, which is basically the file in my local repository in my project app. Index.jsp is basically what outlines what goes into my web app, the web app that people see. That's why it's so simple right now, because there's not much going on yet. So I'm going to populate the code that I've just downloaded. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to open it in my IDE so you can see the code, the HTML code over here. Wow, perfect. It's right here. It's available for me. And I am going to be downloading that, copying that basically, and then pasting that whole thing, the entire thing that I just copied, into index.jsp. So it's going to look like a massive file now, a lot bigger. But I'm just going to press save. And next, I'm going to be saving some content, some image assets. Now you might be wondering, hold on a second. We were just copying HTML, a content from an HTML file over to a .jsp file? Yes, yep, you can do that. And that's because with a .jsp file, you can contain both standard HTML code as well as your Java code. But we are now ready to upload all of the content from this zip file into our local repository as well. So let me just save link as one more time and save all of these files that's in this folder. Okay, and make sure that you're expanding the zip file, so you're opening the contents in that zip file. And this folder that gets created, I'm just going to zoom in so you can actually see this. So first of all, there was the zip file. But once I clicked on it and opened the zip file, there's this folder that's waiting for me. This is the folder that I want to be uploading into my Cloud9 repo. So let us, that was my IDE. But inside Cloud9, let us go into web app. So find web app. Let's right click on it and let's click new folder. Actually, I think what we'll do instead of that, I think the better way to do this is I'm going to just delete mine, sorry. So once you're here inside the web app folder, what you want to do is you want to click on File at the top, and you want to go Upload Local Files. You're basically saying, hey, I want to upload some files that I've downloaded locally into my computer, and then select some files that you want to upload locally. Select the entire folder that you've downloaded and just click upload, and that's it. Now the entire folder is going to be uploaded. So just allow this action. Click on upload from this pop-up banner if you see that yourself. And you're going to see it at work. Perfect. That was super fast. Just like that, all of the files have already been uploaded. Wow, look at it go. It's still going. Wow, so nice. So just like that, a whole suite of HTML files, not HTML files, sorry, but image assets or other files relevant for my website have just been uploaded into my local repository in Cloud9. So that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. And I'm going to, again, commit my changes. Oh my gosh, this is going to be exciting. So let me commit my changes and see what happens to my pipeline. All right, I've committed the changes. I've pushed it upstream. So what that means is code commit now has the latest version of all of the changes I've just made to index.jsp. Code commit also now has all of the files that I just uploaded. And watch the pipeline run again. Look at that. Build just said it's in progress. What? That was so fast. So what happened just now was after I said commit my changes and I push it upstream, over here in CodePipeline, it has successfully first saved all of my changes to my code commit repository, but more importantly, it automatically just started code build for me. What? I love this moment so much. It basically just means it has clicked start build for me automatically. Now that CodeCommit has been, now that CodeCommit has the latest version of my source code, code build has automatically started. And once code build has automatically finished, code deploy will automatically work as well, automatically start working. So the pipeline is absolutely restarting in that sense. This pipeline reacts to a code commit repository being updated. So when you make a commit in your local developer environment, which is basically what's happening in Cloud9, and that pushes changes up to your code commit repository, then your code pipeline gets triggered. It runs automatically. So this is super handy to know. And it also means that once it's successful, code deploy is going to tell you that it's successful. Oh, our code build is still doing its job. Oh, it's built. Okay, it's built. And then we're going to see code deploy basically deploy the latest changes that we've made to our web app onto a new, onto the web server. And I can't wait to see it happen. Ooh, this is cool. But yeah, once code deploy is successful, we're going to go back to the tab that's hosting our web app and we're going to refresh it and see what we see now. What do we see now after updating our index.jsp and after uploading some files? What do we see? Okay, code deploy has said it's a success. So let us refresh the tab. Wow, okay, we have our HTML file kind of working, but as you can see, not all of the files are opening for me. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that my files over here are uploaded. Okay, they're good. But oh my goodness, the folder name of my files is wrong. It says you should be in a job you love files 2. Oh my goodness, it should not be called 2. It should just be called everyone, you should be in a job you love files, just like that. I think it accidentally appended the name 2 into my folder name because I've already have a copy of this folder when I downloaded it. But what that means is if you uploaded this folder and it also says 2 at the end, please update it for yourself as well, because you're going to end up seeing the same error as me, which is quite funny. So that's okay. Let's go back, okay, to our terminal and make sure that we are saving and committing this latest change as well. Yeah, now that I have updated the name, oh, sorry, my cursor is looking a bit strange right now, doesn't it? Now that I have updated the name of my folder, I absolutely need to commit the changes that I've made. And again, watch build happen again and watch deploy happen again. But can you see how frustrating this entire experience could be if I had to manually build and manually deploy each time I make those mistakes and I have to update my web server after I fix those mistakes? It can get a little tiring running these lines over and over again. Like imagine if you're an engineer and you're constantly releasing changes and you're constantly probably like fixing errors. Having to do deploy again, having to do build one more time, it can take a bit of time. It can be a little taxing. So that's okay. We're we're going to we're going to add our changes, commit those changes one more time. My commit message, I think, is going to be updated folder name for web app files. And I'm again going to push my changes upstream with git push. I think it's going to work now. Please work. That would be amazing if we worked. But yes, now that I've pushed my changes upstream one more time, what do we think is going to happen? I think this is going to restart itself one more time. So our pipeline is already executing again now because it sensed that there's been a commit to the code. And it is basically some changes are being pushed upstream. We want to make sure that our pipeline reacts to that immediately. And look, our pipeline that is so good. I'm very, very glad to see that it's working as it should. Now, again, we know that this build process takes a bit of time. So I think I'm going to do something sneaky and make sure that we can fill in, we can have a look at this actually, because this is probably the place where, okay, let's say code deploy has successfully deployed your application. You're ready to check out your web server one more time, but you see this error. This is the error that I saw just now, where when I tried to visit the public IPv4 address for my web server, it wasn't responding. Nothing was coming out. And the reason for that, okay, the reason for this is your IP address changed. Remember when I checked my IP address and I was like, oh, shoot, it went from 66 to 65 at the end. My IP address just changed. And why did that happen? So your IP address can actually change without you knowing because your internet service provider just gave you a new one. This happens whenever you restart your router, you make changes to your network. It's also super, super, super common. Most devices use dynamic IP addresses, and that means your IP address can change as frequently as 24 hours or even less, every few hours it could be changing. And that's just something that you absolutely need to be aware of and adapt to when you are passing your IP address through to the security group for an EC2 instance. Because remember, when we first set up our EC2 instance, we enter an IP address, when we deployed that CloudFormation template. So what that is saying is our EC2 instance is only going to allow traffic coming through from the IP address you typed in when you first deployed that CloudFormation template. And if your IP address has changed since then, if your IP address has gone from 66 to 65, what happened to me? It means your EC2 instance is going to say, I'm going to allow all traffic from the IP address that ends from 66. Hey, your IP address ends in 65. I can't let you through. I'm only going to let through traffic coming from the IP address ending in 66. And you're going to say, no, that device is me. It's just that my IP address has changed. But, well, EC2 and the security group is not going to listen. It is very rightfully very strict on the IP addresses that it allows through. And that is why just now we had to go into our security group. We had to click on edit inbound rules. We had to do this thing where we put in our new IP address and add that /32 at the end to finally see our web app working correctly. Our web app correctly. Sorry, I just realized I said working correctly, but working correctly probably isn't the right sentence there. We had to basically enter the new IPv4 address, enter the IPv4 address for our web server, and we had to put HTTP in front, run it again to see our web app actually working. So let me visit my web app one more time. Is it going to work this time? Whew, nice. This is cool. Very cool. My web app is working correctly now, so this is great. What that means for me is we've just successfully released a change to our web app, and the building and the deployment was automatic. It was done beautifully. because of the help of CodePipeline automating the integrations between them. Oh, doesn't that look beautiful? It looks beautiful. I'm in love with it. I'm so in love with it. So let us take a screenshot and put that screenshot through. Okay. Over here, let's put that screenshot through over here. And let's write out some documentation. Very nice. So now that I've taken a screenshot, I am going to make a few mentions. My CI/CD pipeline gets triggered by a commit in my local repository, local working environment, which I'm going to say in brackets Cloud9, which updates my code commit repository. I tested this by making 2 updates to my web app source code. These changes were, what changes did you make in your Cloud9 IDE? These changes were an edit to index.jsp and uploading a folder of image assets and uploading a folder of image assets in the web app folder of my project files. And I'm just going to make sure that these are bolded like this. Once my pipeline executed successfully, I checked. Which tab did you check? I checked the IPv4 address of. Once my pipeline executed successfully, I checked the IPv4 address of my web server that's hosting my web app. Whew, that was very, very successful. I'm so happy to see it. I think we can move on to the next step now. Very, very cool. So let's visit our next step, okay, which is to trigger a rollback. I love this step because you really see the power of CodePipeline with this step. It is massive, okay? Scroll down to the deploy panel in CodePipeline, okay? Once you're here, click the Start Rollback button. Okay, and when you are starting a rollback, you can click on here, updated appspec.yaml, and let us click Start Rollback one more time. Okay. Is the rollback going to happen? Let us wait for it to roll out. Okay, so do you see rollback happen? What does rollback mean? What does rollback mean? You shall find out in a second. I'm going to let it sink in that you're now seeing a rollback in your deploy panel. And okay, let's talk about what rollback means. A rollback means going back to an earlier working version of your application. So this is a very super useful tool. Yikes. It is a super useful tool if the latest changes cause some problems. So let's say we deployed some changes. Continuous deployment, we're automatically just deploying things all the time. And the latest automatic deployment was like a bit of a failure. Something went wrong there. And it is causing our users to not be able to see our web app or use some functionalities in the web app. And we say, screw it, let's roll back the latest deployment that we've made so that our users are not stuck by this error anymore. So your source code over here, your source code is going to stay the same. Look, it still has our latest commit message in it, updated folder name for web app files. That's the very last commit we've made. And the build stage is still going to be building. It's going to be creating a WAR file for for the latest changes that we've made, but in terms of deployment, this has rolled back. It has gone back to the version of our code when we only just updated appspec.yml. We haven't done anything fancy to our web app yet. So if I were to refresh this, what are we going to see? So let me refresh this. What? Do you see? Our web app has reverted back to its old look. And that just means that the rollback was successful. Very, very cool. What I'll do is let's take a screenshot of your deploy panel showing the successful rollback. So let us take a screenshot of this. Akinola says, well done, Nat. Thank you so much, Akinola. And thank you for staying here for the entire live. That is crazy. Or if you took a break and just came back, thanks so much for coming back. It means a lot. So let's take a screenshot of the successful deploy panel. Actually, let's take a bigger screenshot so you can see the whole thing. And paste that into the first frame on the next slide. So, oh, I just realized you can't see me, but just now I was on this slide, release a change in my documentation template, but I'm gonna go down here. I just quickly click on the bottom like preview image for this slide, and I'm gonna paste the image over here. There we go. So now you have a copy of that successful rollback panel. And what is the next step after this? Refresh the tab with your web app open. Yep, we've refreshed it. You have seen that our web app has updated itself to that old version that looks a little bit simple. But hey, if let's just say our latest deployment had a few errors, I'd rather be seeing the older, simpler version of my web app than a web app that doesn't actually work and is crashing. So this is absolutely a success. So let us take a screenshot of our web app's latest look. I love how we call it the latest look, but actually it's the old version. So let's just take a screenshot of this and let us paste that into our documentation template. Put that into the second slide. Looks good. Erwin says, I have to try this over the weekend. Yes. Would you like to give it a try? I would love to see how you find this project. I bet you're going to crush it. You're going to absolutely crush it, man. It's going to be so cool to see how you find this project. And yeah, now that we have pasted our screenshot in the second frame, before we write anything, let us actually do a bit of understanding. We're going to go back to our code pipelines pipeline page and notice that it's only a rollback of the deploy stage. So can we have a bit of evidence that our source stage is actually in the latest version of our code? Yes, we can. Notice how the source is referencing the last commit message that I've put in through to Cloud9. You know, when I committed those changes after I saved, after I updated index.jsp, after I updated the folder name from everyone should be in a job they love files 2 into everyone should just be in a job that they love, when I renamed that folder, I wrote this commit message. And this commit message is basically the version of code commit. This is basically the version of code commit that our source stage is on. So if you want to see evidence of that, just click on that little hyperlink text over here. Just click on that. And you're going to see a commit page. And this commit page is basically a recap of all of the changes that you've made in a single commit. So I really like this page because it's a great place to just review like what are the changes I made when I push through git commit. And in my case, remember how the very last commit that I made was basically changing the name of a folder. So it was basically saying that, hey, like you've added these files because these files now have a new name. It went from you should be in a job you love files 2 into just you should be in a job you love files. And that to the commit page is like, oh, you've added something new here. So this is really cool. So this basically is giving me evidence that to our source stage, we're absolutely still in the version of our code that is after I've updated my web app to look like that fancy, flashy landing page just now. And you know what? You can even click on commits over here to see a list of all of the commits that you've made to your local repository in Cloud9. Look at that. If you just even click on this commit, that was back when we added that buildspec.yml file, you're going to see that, oh, this is your commit page, remembering that, oh yeah, when you push through that commit, the changes that you made is, you created a new file called buildspec.yml and you populated it with this code. Oh yeah, you also created settings.xml. You populated it with this code. Isn't that so handy for having a recap of exactly what you did at every commit? The power of Git repositories. Super, super powerful. So with that learning, let us switch back to our CodePipeline pipeline. It's just so funny trying to say that. The CodePipeline pipeline. And let us, oh yes, so we have just talked about all of this. And let's click on release change. What does release change mean? All right. Releasing a change will detect the most recent change in each location configured in your source actions and run that change through the pipeline. Do you want to continue? There's even a little panel that says your source revision will override. Oh, okay, we don't really want to touch that actually. I just realized this is something a bit more complex that we won't go into. But what release change was saying is it is going to find the latest commit that you've made, and it's going to roll that latest commit that you've made, update code commit to make sure that it has the version of the latest version of your code. And it's going to make sure that you're building now the latest version of your code, and it's going to be deploying the latest version of your code. So that is absolutely the best way to just automatically release changes, release something new that you've made throughout your entire pipeline. Super, super helpful. Whoa, someone in the chat says, let's go, and it's giving me a tear face. Oh my God, we're feeling sad right now. Why are we feeling sad? I hope you're okay. There's also fire emojis going off right now in the chat. Thank you so much to Hex TV for the love and for the support. That is very, very kind of you. So building always takes a little bit of time, but it's okay. It just needs that love. That's fine. Once building is done and deployment is done, we're going to refresh this tab once more so that we're going to refresh this tab once more so that we can see the latest version of our web app once we refresh it. So we're going to refresh this tab once more, but we're going to have to wait. We're going to have to wait for building and the deployment to be done. Lawrence in the chat says, let's go, Nat. I have to say, Lawrence, every time you say let's go, I just get that boost of energy that I didn't know I needed. But I'm definitely so happy that I have it now. So thank you so much, Lawrence. It truly means the world. Okay. So ideally, what's going to happen is once we've released those changes and deployment says that it's done, we can see that our web app has again come back to the latest version that has been sitting in our Cloud9, what is it called? Our Cloud9 working environment. Okay, very, very cool. All right. We're getting so close. Okay, deployment succeeded. Shall we see? Shall we see our latest changes? I'm so excited. Okay, wait time's over. I'm going to assume that our server is now reflecting the latest version of our code. And it is. Oh my goodness, this is so cool. There we go. It's come back to the latest version of our code now. Whoo-wee. Did you see just now? It looked like such a simple web app. We released the changes. We've made sure our deploy stage is now reflecting the latest version of our code. And there it is. It sure is now. I am just so satisfied right now. That is so good to see. So congratulations. You now have a working CI/CD pipeline all set up. Amazing work. I'm so proud of you, and I hope you're proud of yourself. And let us get straight into wrapping up our documentation. But actually, before we do that, I would rather that we talk about triggering a rollback. I just realized I didn't get to fill in all of my documentation steps for this. So let's do that. You know what? Let's do that. A rollback in a pipeline means, oh my gosh, Erwin dropped some fire emojis in the chat. Thank you so much. Thank you, Erwin. That's super cool of you. A rollback in a pipeline means, I feel like saying rolling back is cheating. So a rollback in a pipeline means reverting the version of our code that a stage of our pipeline is referring to. I initiated a rollback on the deploy stage. Oh, typos. On the deploy stage, that's where I initiated my rollback. I checked the source stage and learned that the source stage was unaffected by the rollback and stayed. It really did. It really stayed stayed using the latest version of my source code. Once the rollback was complete, my web app, what did it look like? My web app's appearance reverted back to the simple index.jsp file, reverted back to reflect the simple index.jsp file. The simple JSP file, I would say actually to reflect the simple version of my index.jsp file, i.e. before I ever updated my index.jsp file and uploaded new image assets. To update my deploy stage back to the latest version of my source code, what did you do to get your web app back to displaying the next web homepage? I released a change in my code pipeline. Releasing a change means the latest version of my source code gets pushed, gets used, gets referenced across the source, deploy, source build, and deploy stages. Of my pipeline. That was so satisfying. I loved it. Alrighty, I think now we are finally ready to wrap up our documentation. So to wrap up your documentation today, all you need to do is fill in the prompts for this page called My CI/CD Pipeline. And then once you're done, you'll be ready to write in your key learnings over here. I love this page, by the way. My key learnings is absolutely just such a good page to condense all of your key learnings about this project. And it's also one of the most unique pages across all of the documentation that we see. While the first few pages, that usually people get to share similar thoughts because the prompts are quite direct. It is quite like asking you to note something down specific from the process. But my key learnings is where people like just say what they want to say what they've learned. And we love to see it. We absolutely do, especially this part. One thing I didn't expect was just such a great section to be writing. We love to read this part. And once you're done writing your key learnings, you can summarize again your experience, give a brief introduction to AWS CodePipeline, how you use it in today's project, and how long this project took you in total. As you can tell, this project has taken me 2 hours and 45 minutes. And documentation probably has taken about 15 minutes of that for myself so far, probably 30 minutes total once I tidy up, the other parts of my documentation. And when you're done with that, I think you're ready to kind of do some visual touch-ups. First, add a screenshot to here. So, the screenshot I would add would probably just be this homepage here. So I would take a screenshot. I think now is the perfect time to do it right away. I'll take a screenshot like this, and I'll probably put that as one of my cover photos. This looks pretty good. And then the other visual touch-up that you could do is to fill in these with your name and your profile picture. So you can absolutely use any profile picture that you're comfortable with, that you feel like represents you very well. I don't know if you can find a profile picture of me easily over here. I guess you really can't. Which means I can demonstrate something. You can click on, from the uploads section in Canva, you can click on upload files, and over here you can, find the image of yourself that you want to use and upload that. So shall I do this one? I think this one kind of works. So this is a photo that I've taken that I'll use as my profile pic, and I'm going to click on this. Okay, once you click on that photo, it's going to look huge, but that's okay. Okay, we're going to just edit this photo to make it, we're just going to edit this photo so that it's a bit smaller. And actually, if you want to, you can just simply drag this photo straight into the circle. And look at that, your circle will populate itself automatically. I love just how flexible it is that you can double click into the photo to resize, reposition, and I'm going to absolutely resize it so that it looks a bit like a profile pic, like this. And then I will click away so I can save my changes. Yeah, it looks pretty nice, actually. I'm quite happy with this. And yeah, with this photo, now that you have a copy of it and you have a copy of your name, you can always select them both, press Command-C on your keyboard or Control-C if you're using Windows, and then paste it over here like this. And then you can use that to resize it here. Okay, over here, you can resize it like this so that your image is replacing the one below. And then for Natasha Ong, actually, I'm going to take back what I've said. I'm going to use another technique. I'm going to delete this first, and I'm going to press Command-F. I'm going to find the words your name like this, and I'm going to replace them all with my name, Natasha Ong. So I'm going to type in Natasha Ong here. I'm going to click on replace all. Boom. Now every single page should have my name on it already, which is going to be really handy. So if you click on the next step, yeah, you can see that my name's already there. And instead of linkedin.com, your link ... make sure you update that to actually reflect your LinkedIn URL. So let's say my LinkedIn URL is linkedin.com/Natasha Ong. I can just do that like this. Replace all. Boom. Done. It looks so good. I think it looks great. So shout out to our amazing team for putting this template together for us to use today. And you can always just paste that existing image and then copy it again, like this, Command-C, and then paste it in the next one. What I usually find is sometimes, now that you copy it again from that sticky spot, you can just paste it again and again and again, and you don't need to reposition your image at all. So this is pretty helpful. So I'm just like leafing through all the pages in my documentation template and just sticking that same photo in. And let's say I get to the end and I'm like, oh, actually, I want this image to be in here. And you see you can't drag it. Ugh, that's so annoying. How you can resolve this is you can zoom in here. Here, click detach image, the very last option in this pop-up banner. And then the image is now detached and you can attach it to something new straight away. So that was super helpful. It's pretty nice too. And if you see that the image doesn't really attach very, very well, what you can do is you can try crop it down like this and then drag up the entire photo like this. And that looks much, much better than when half of my face is hidden. So that's perfect. Okay, cool. So let's say that you have finished up tidying up your documentation. It looks great. Lawrence in the chat says those deployments was really helpful in the AWS CCP exam. Keep in mind though. Let's go. Let's go indeed, Lawrence. Nice tip. So now that you've wrapped up your documentation, it looks really good. Share your work. If you're here right now, you're a champion that spent almost 3 hours in this project. That is huge. That needs to be celebrated. I want to stand up, give you a standing ovation for doing this project. So please share your PDF with the Nextweek community. Tell us that you've done this project so we can all celebrate with you. I can't wait. I think it's going to be amazing. The very first time we see someone post their documentation for the crown jewel of this entire cloud DevOps project. Such a celebration to be had. I would love to see it. And then next, you can share it on LinkedIn. So you can click here to open a pre-filled post ready for you to use. And once you open it, yeah, you're going to see that this post already has some copy ready for you to use. That's all about your code pipeline project journey. And this is something that you can absolutely close away, by the way, because you shall press the X here and click the plus here to actually open up more options and then add a document. Now, adding a document is exactly how you can upload a PDF file and create that carousel, that like swiping, I would say those kinds of images that you can continue swiping and seeing a new image of. Those are called carousels, and you can absolutely create your own by uploading a PDF. So what kind of PDF do you think we should be uploading? I hope the answer that you're saying right now is your documentation, because that's absolutely the PDF that we want to be sharing. So let me upload a documentation that I've seen recently, and it would be the IAM project that Abdul Rahman has created. So shout out to Abdul Rahman. If you're seeing this, I'm uploading your IAM project documentation as my example today. But your document title should absolutely say CI/CD pipeline with CodePipeline, because that's exactly the project that you've just done. And once you're done with that, you can click on Done at the bottom of your panel, and you're done. And then you can click Post, and then it's ready for the whole world to see. So that's amazing. All right. Once you've clicked Post, don't forget to tag Nextwork. Change this to an actual tag. Find this in your copy. Okay, highlight the words Nextwork. And ideally, a drop-down is going to show up for you to select Nextwork from the table of options. But if it doesn't show up, you can backspace and type in the @ one more time, and that's absolutely going to show you Nextwork as an option. That's how you can click us and then click Post and then click Post. So don't be trigger happy like me. Make sure you update this into an actual Nextwork tag, please. And then click Post. And then you're all done. So that is super exciting and super easy. And once you're done uploading your file onto LinkedIn, we can start wrapping up today's project by deleting all of the resources we've used today. So before you read the steps on deleting your resources, do you think you can challenge yourself to delete everything in this project without any guidance? Even if it's just one or two that you can remember deleting, that is so much better than relying on the guide to figure out what resources you want to be deleting. Because keeping track of the resources in your account and deleting them at the end, number one skill. I really think that you need to be building that skill yourself, because when you're creating personal projects, no one is going to be writing a guide for you on what resources you should be deleting off of your account. So build this habit as soon as you can. And this is absolutely one of the best places to be building that habit, because Once you're like, okay, I think I've deleted everything, there is a checklist for you over here for you to make sure that, okay, you really have done this. Tick, 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 tick. There are quite a few resources for us to delete today. So let us go through those right now. The first thing that I always would do is to delete CloudFormation templates, because that clears off a lot of resources for me. So the first thing I'm going to delete is the EC2 VPC stack, CloudFormation stack. So just once you select a stack in CloudFormation, there is a delete button beautifully just sitting there waiting for you to click on it. So click on delete and delete it right away. Same thing with the next thing. Your DevOps project stack, that needs to be deleted. So click on that, select it, and then click delete over here and delete it off. Done. That's not just 2 resources, that's many resources that were deleted just by deleting those stacks. So we have deleted 2 CloudFormation stacks. What else can you think of? I really like to just go through all of my tabs. You can see all of these tabs open. Just go through those tabs one by one and think, ooh, is there a resource here that I've created manually that I should be deleting right now? So in this case, I'm going to be deleting my build artifact as well. So let me build artifact bucket. So let me delete the bucket. This is in the Amazon S3 console. You want to be finding your build artifact bucket and delete it off. But do we actually need to delete our build artifact bucket? I wonder. Let me refresh my page and see what comes up. Okay, so my build artifact bucket should be getting deleted by my CloudFormation stack, because don't forget that build artifact bucket was a part of that CloudFormation stack when we first deployed it. So that means CloudFormation should be deleting it for me. There was actually a delete failed. So what happened here? The build artifact bucket refused to delete. Okay, so I guess that means we can delete it for ourselves after all, huh? So let's click on that. Let's try deleting it. I wonder why we could not, our CloudFormation stack could not delete by itself. Do you think it's because there are actually objects in the bucket now? I think that might be it. I think that might be the reason why. So let's empty the bucket for ourselves and then delete the build artifacts bucket. Okay, let's find the build artifacts bucket here. Actually, let me go back to the buckets page and then delete it from the buckets page. So find your build artifacts bucket one more time, select it over here, and press delete. I think we can successfully delete it now because we could empty the bucket. How good is this? How good is this? Thank you so much. CodePipeline also creates buckets for you. So make sure we're deleting those too. So let us delete that. Again, empty your bucket before you can delete it properly. So I'm gonna make sure I type permanently delete or copy and paste permanently delete. And then let's delete the entire bucket as well. So let me select the bucket. Let me click on delete. Let me copy in the name here and delete the bucket. Did it delete? Okay, perfect. It deleted. We have our S3 bucket deleted. What were the resources that we created for code deploy? Because code deploy was the one resource that it's the one stage that wasn't included in our CloudFormation template at all. So let's make sure that our code deploy role is being deleted, is what I can think of. Okay, let's delete that. And let's type in the role name in here to delete it successfully. I also just want to make sure were there any other resources that failed to delete from my CloudFormation template. If there is, I'm going to make sure that I'm deleting those manually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just check the events for my CloudFormation template and see if any other resources failed to delete. Okay, no other resources failed to delete. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Cool. Well, I guess that means we can move on to our policies. Were there any policies that need to be deleted? Let's have a look. Nope, nothing that needs to be deleted over here. I guess we can move on to, let's see, Cloud9. Our Cloud9 IDE can be deleted. So let us go to Cloud9 and let's visit, oh, that is code commit, that's okay. Let us find Cloud9 on the search bar and let us try to delete that as well. If there's a resource that you think I'm missing, add that to the chat. I would love to see if you get to catch anything that I've missed, because I think that's totally possible, by the way. So let me just type in delete to confirm my deletion. Done. Plaxides in the chat says, nice, I'll make a post. Thank you so much. That's really cool. I can't wait to see your post. I think it's going to be so awesome when we start to see people posting about this exact project, because it truly is the hardest project yet. Truly is. So it absolutely deserves like a big congratulation if you get to this point. Now, you're going to notice if you were to just leaf through what we have across code commit to code build, nothing's in here already. Why is that? We had a code commit repository. We had a code artifact domain. We had a code artifact repository. You know, we had 2 code artifact repositories. What? Why are they all gone? In the code build, the build project is gone? What? It's gone now. So the reason for that is because these were all resources that were a part of our CloudFormation template. So when we deleted our CloudFormation stack, all of these resources were deleted with the stack. So good, such a time saver. Now inside code deploy, a lot of things that we created in code deploy, of course, we have to delete manually because they weren't a part of our CloudFormation stack. So let us click into the application and delete it off. So let's type delete over here. So good. And again, pipeline. Our crown jewel for this project, CodePipeline. Unfortunately, let's delete that pipeline. That needs to be deleted too. So let's type delete in this field. The following resources were used to detect source changes and will be removed. Yeah, perfect. I think this is exactly what we want to be removing as well. So this is cool. Let's delete it. And there we go. CodePipeline has successfully deleted itself as well. Do you think we can check? I think it's time to check and see if we've ticked off everything. Okay, we have definitely deleted our Cloud9 IDE. We were deleting it literally just then. It's deleted now. It's gone. Cool. In our CloudFormation console, we deleted the 2 stacks. It was the first thing we deleted, so we definitely did that. In CodePipeline, deleted the pipeline. In code deploy, we deleted the application. In S3, did we delete the other buckets created by CodePipeline? Yes, we did. And if you're wondering, why did we create S3 buckets? It's because CodePipeline creates S3 buckets to store those intermediary artifacts for each stage of your pipeline. You know, the source code that it needs to turn into a zip file and pass to code build, and then the build artifacts that code build creates that it needs to pass to code deploy. Those artifacts get stored in S3. So absolutely, that automatically generated bucket needs to exist. But since we've finished the project now, it can absolutely go as well, and that's why we deleted it too. In the IAM console, there was a role that we forgot to delete. It was the CodePipeline service role. So that's definitely something I need to make sure we're deleting. Goodness me. So let's visit the IAM console and let us delete CodePipeline. Aha, there was one. A customer managed policy called CodePipeline. Oh, you can barely see that. I'm so sorry. Let me just zoom in so you can see now. So there is a policy called AWS CodePipeline service role. So let's make sure we delete that. And we absolutely will be okay after we remove it too. So no worries, delete it now. And same with the role. So let us delete code. Oh, I don't think I have my role anymore. Maybe it was the deleted. Let's also make sure that the code build role and the network code deploy role are also deleted. So let us click delete here. Let us type delete in the field. We don't need it anymore. Delete, delete. The role with the name network code deploy role cannot be found. Okay, I guess it's already been deleted, so it couldn't be found, which is not a bad thing at all. It's already gone. And is there anything else? Is there anything else? I think we have deleted the policy just now when we were in the policies tab. And yeah, if I were to type in code pipeline, can I still see it? The one that I created? Nope. You don't see any other custom managed policies here. It was already deleted. Very cool. And we still have more. In the CloudWatch console, we still need to delete some of the log groups. So let's visit CloudWatch over here. And let us visit our log groups over here to delete all of the log groups that were stored about our web app. Yeah, we should definitely be deleting this. My goodness. Saad in the chat says, are access to these labs free? Absolutely, it is free. The link to getting access to these labs is in the description box. And I can't wait to hear how you find it. If you get stuck, please feel free to email me. It is natasha@nextweek.org. I'm just going to type that in the chat in case you get stuck at any time. Just know that I can be contacted from this email as well. Very cool. And I am just going to delete this log group because we do not need this at all. Network build logs as well. Oh, my screen is stuck. That is okay. Let me click on network build logs and let me delete that altogether. Delete log groups. Okay. And press delete. Oh, I think my screen is stuck one more time. That's okay. I'm just going to give it a second. Oh, dearly. Okay, can it work now? Okay, it's working now. Let me click delete. Phew! I think that is it. Oh my goodness, wow. That is a wrap for today. Was that project 7 of the DevOps series all done? Was that the entire DevOps series all done in one go? Woohoo! Congratulations. That is a wrap for this DevOps series of AWS projects. Well done. You made it to the very end of the DevOps series. You should be so proud of yourself for making it this far because look at what you've created over this series. And technically in just one sitting, if you're doing this entire project in one sitting as well. In just 3 hours, we have used Cloud9 to create a suite of files for a Java web app. We have used Cloud9 IDE to be hosting our Cloud9, an EC2 instance to be hosting our Cloud9 IDE. There's Code Artifact, which is what we're using to save backup copies of our web apps packages and dependencies. Code Commit is our Google Drive in the cloud. I love using that analogy so much. It is the one place where we're storing our code in the cloud. And code build is using the code that's stored in code commit, taking it, and it's compiling it, it's packaging it into a Java WAR file, which is that single zip file that contains everything a web server will need to host your web app. And it is storing that Java WAR file into this S3 build artifacts bucket. And from this build artifacts bucket, code deploy will go and grab that artifact file that's sitting in our bucket, grabs it, and it goes and chucks that file and starts to host it in our web server. Very, very cool. And the web server, what is it displaying? What does it show if we try to visit our web server's IPv4 address? It shows us this beautiful website over here. So that is our CI/CD pipeline working with the power of CodePipeline, which is what we use today, to connect all of these 3 stages together, making it continuous, making it a continuous integration and continuous deployment. So today, specifically for CodePipeline, you've learned how to set up a pipeline. You've learned how to execute a pipeline, make that pipeline work, run, do its thing with integrating all 3 steps between code commit, code build, code deploy. You released a change. That was really cool. And you triggered a rollback. So that was awesome too. Um, I am just so happy that we have created such an amazing thing using AWS services today. All of this is made possible with this suite of tools, this code family of tools. And of course, with a lot of your patience, a lot of your dedication to learning, you've made it to this point as well. So a big congratulations to you. It is so wild that all of these learnings can be packed into one project. So great work. And can't wait to see you in the next project. My goodness, what project topic would you like to see next? We'll absolutely do that. The whole reason why the DevOps series exists, by the way, is because we actually weren't planning on creating a DevOps series until the people joining the community said, by the way, I'm interested in DevOps. By the way, I'm interested in Terraform. By the way, I'm interested in CI/CD. So we thought, okay, I guess we should make projects about this. And that's why this entire DevOps series is existing today. God of War fan says, thanks for the efforts. Bedrock, please. Ooh, Bedrock is cool. It's within AI machine learning. I remember. So let us look into that one. We absolutely want to revisit AI and machine learning as well. So that would be perfect. Farron Perry says the channel is so dope. Thank you so much. That's so cool. What a compliment. I'm very, very touched. Thank you so much, Farron. All right. To commemorate this very special occasion, you have this special badge from us to you. That you are a DevOps engineer in the making. You should be so proud of yourself. All right, that is a wrap for today's project. It has been a blast. Thank you for doing this project with me. And let's stay in touch in the community. All right, I am signing off for now, but I will chat with you in the community. Wow, I just repeated myself, but that was absolutely worth it. All right, bye everyone. Thanks for today. See ya.